Chapter 118. The eunuchs who followed him were all doing their best. When they faced Yang Chendong, they all had a flattering look on their faces. They had all received 500 taels of silver from eunuch Mao Mu in advance. How could they not do their best now? With everyone's cooperation, Yang Chendong soon had a good idea of the arrangements for the various locations. In fact, he had already gotten the blueprint of the palace before. Now he just needed to walk around in the real world and confirm the final location. 4 hours later, the people and things arranged were all in place. More than 500 daughters of officials who came to watch the ceremony also came to the palace. They were scattered within the range of their activities, chatting in groups of 3 or 5. It seemed that everything was ready. Finally, a sharp shout came, "The Emperor and the Empress Dowager are here." Soon, the whole place became quiet. Zhu Qizhen, who was dressed in a dragon robe, walked to the courtyard of Princess Changda's palace, surrounded by Empress Qian and a group of concubines. They sat in the seats arranged by Yang Chendong. There were too many people. Ordinary palaces could not accommodate them. Fortunately, it was the end of April, the beginning of May. The daytime weather in the capital was still very pleasant. Since they were all arranged in the courtyard, no one had any objections. In the courtyard, everyone was in place. Yang Chendong, the organizer and planner, was also watching all this from a corner. When he saw that even the Emperor and Empress were present, he smiled and nodded slightly to Madame Shui, who was not far away. Madame Shui got Yang Chendong's hint and said loudly, "The birthday celebration of Princess Xianxia officially begins. Please enjoy the first program, the opening dance, Happy Birthday Song." As soon as Madame Shui finished speaking, a group of 14 or 15 years old girls ran out from the corner of the palace. They all wore short skirts that exposed their knees. They were young and lively and ran out separately. The sudden appearance of so many people caused everyone present to be shocked at first, but when they saw these beautiful girls, whose average age was only between 13 and 16 years old, go straight to the third princess's side and surround her, after being surprised, they all revealed expressions of understanding. Needless to say, this must have been arranged by Dong Shui. Sure enough, it was different. This opening was completely different from the previous ones. The sudden appearance of dozens of beautiful girls also shocked Zhu Qizhen, who was just about to find fault with the situation. Originally, he wanted to express his dissatisfaction in the first program and was prepared to give Yang Chendong a show of strength. But unexpectedly, he was shocked by the exposed white thighs. In the entire scene, there were only 2 real men. One was him, and the other was Dong Shui Yang Chendong. Naturally, Yang Chendong had already seen these leggings countless times, so he was already immune to them and used to them. Zhu Qizhen was different. Although he had many concubines in his harem, they were usually dignified and beautiful in consideration of their status. Who would dare to wear such clothes in front of him? Naturally, he was shocked by this sudden sight. He was so shocked that he completely forgot about finding fault with him. In contrast, Princess Changda, who was surrounded by the girls, was very happy. She only knew in advance that there would be such an opening dance that required her cooperation. When the time came, she only needed to follow these girls and walk around the field. But she never thought that it would be such a big scene, especially the clothes they were wearing. They were so beautiful that they could show off their beauty completely. It made her want to wear one of them. According to the previous agreement, after being surrounded by the beautiful girls, Princess Changda followed them from the stage to the field. Then the sound of guzheng and pipa sounded. After a prelude that no one had heard before, Madame Shui walked on the field in person. She bowed slightly to the third princess, and then sang a beautiful song. There is always a song on the road of growth. It's a happy birthday song. With our growth, it's a familiar song. Holding your hand, I want to sing a happy birthday song with you. Today is your birthday. I just want to tell you that today is your birthday. I wrote a song for you. You and I are in the song. I'm so happy. This birthday song of Lu Mengzhe was not famous even in the future, but it was suitable for today's occasion. Yang Qindong had searched in the big warehouse for a long time before he found this song. As soon as the song was played, it immediately excited the audience. It was a new song that no one had heard at all, and it was so relevant. No one could think of any reason to object. Even Zhu Qizhen had long wanted to make things difficult for Yang Qindong, but at this moment, he really couldn't find a better reason to do so. He could only look on with hope and find a way to hold Yang Qindong accountable in the next step. From his investigation of Yang Qindong, he had come to the conclusion that although he was very good at composing songs, especially new ones, they were usually inspirational and emotional. However, it was clear that this kind of song was not suitable for the occasion of the princess' birthday. When the time came, Zhu Qizhen would be able to find a reason to punish Yang Qindong. The happy birthday song ended with the accompaniment of the girls. Following that, a different kind of music began to play. Zhu Qizhen's eyes lit up. As the heavy melody played, Princess Changda's expression changed from one of joy to one of seriousness. At some point, Mu Lily, the former procuress of the 100 Flowers Hall and one of the stewards of the Immortal abode, was standing beside the third princess. Mu Lily had already become a woman from a good family. Following the introduction of the melody, she suddenly opened her mouth and sang in a mezzo-soprano voice, "Thinking of your back, I feel your tenacity. Touching your hands, I feel your hardships. Unknowingly, white hair has appeared on your temples. Silently, wrinkles have appeared at the corners of your eyes. My old father. The person I dote on the most." The song, "Old Father," took the stage. When she sang about, "My old father, the person I dote on the most," Princess Xianxia also sang along with her, her expression full of deep emotion. She was using this song to tell everyone that she was reminiscing about her father, Ming Xuanzong Zhu Zhanji. Originally, this kind of song was more suitable for a man to sing. For example, Yang Qindong, who had been controlling everything from the shadows, was an extremely suitable person. However, after some consideration, he gave up on the idea of doing it himself. Firstly, if he openly appeared in a place filled with women other than the emperor, it would easily cause trouble. Secondly, no matter how good Ming Xuanzong Zhu Zhanji was, he wasn't his father. Why should he stand out and sing for someone else? If Yang Qindong didn't come out to sing, Princess Xianxia definitely wouldn't be able to complete the song. If she forced herself to sing, it would only cause the meaning to change. Thus, he chose Mu Lily. This former courtesan had experienced many things, and her voice carried a trace of vicissitudes. She was just the right person to sing the song. Thus, the scene in front of them was born. Mu Lily sang the lead, and Princess Xianxia sang the key words, completing the song. The reason why she had to sing "Old Father" was because in the past dynasties, the emperors usually ruled the world with benevolence and filial piety. Without a father, how could a child be born? Once this song was played, it was really just to fit the situation. At least, once this song was played, Zhu Qizhen, who had been finding fault with it, couldn't say anything. After the song "Old Father" ended, the melody changed again. Mu Lily left as quietly as she came, and left without attracting anyone's attention. Only Princess Xianxia was left standing in the middle of the field, speaking to the crowd with a trace of sadness in her voice. 14 years ago, my mother gave birth to me on this day. Now that I've grown up, she's truly separated from me forever. As her daughter, I miss her dearly. Now, I'll dedicate the song "Only Mother is Good in the World" to everyone. I also hope that my deceased mother can feel that her daughter misses her. These lines that Yang Qindong had composed quickly resonated with everyone, especially since most of the people present were women. There were even women like Empress Qian, who was going to be a mother in the future. Princess Xianxia's words instantly aroused their endless thoughts about their mother. Only mother is good in the world. A child with a mother is like a treasure. Throw yourself into your mother's embrace, and you won't be able to enjoy happiness. Princess Xianxia's voice carried a trace of longing and reminiscence, instantly stirring up the emotions of everyone present. Because the lyrics were simple and the melody easy to understand, many people present agreed on the third time. Even Empress Qian's tears flowed freely. When she heard this song, it wasn't difficult for her expression to change. She couldn't help but think of how well her mother had treated her when she was growing up in Haizhou, now Lianyungang, Jiangsu. She immediately tugged at Emperor Zhu Qizhan with her slender hands. "Your Majesty, Xianxia misses mother." "All right, after a while, Zhen will arrange for someone to bring her to the capital to accompany you." Zhu Qizhan looked at this Empress Qian, who rarely asked for anything from him, and immediately agreed. The song, "Only Mother is Good in the World," had stirred up everyone's emotions. Most of the daughters of the officials were thinking that when they returned home from the palace later, they would personally accompany their mothers. At the very least, they would have to thank their mothers for their hard work. Everyone's emotions were so affected that no one noticed that a beautiful, three-tiered pastry had been pushed to the center of the hall, right next to the birthday girl, Princess Changde. "Everyone, please calm down. Since it's a birthday, how could there not be a birthday cake? Everyone, please take a look. This is the birthday cake that our immortal abode has just released. There's cream on top, and a soft pastry underneath. It's fragrant, sweet, and delicious. Everyone will be able to taste it in a moment. Before that, there's one more thing to do, and that is to light a candle and make a wish." Madame Shue's voice clearly rang out in the hall, entering everyone's ears. Chapter 119. Lighting candles to make a wish? What does that mean? A minister's daughter, who had a loose tongue, was puzzled. In fact, not only her, but many people were not very clear about this kind of new birthday ceremony. Madame Shue smiled. Before they came, the sixth young master had told her the story. Now she was full of confidence and said, "It is said that in the world of immortals, people there worship the goddess of the moon, Chang'e. Every year, they hold a birthday celebration for her. At the banquet, cakes made of flour and honey were placed on the cake with many lit candles. They compared the light from the candles to the moonlight to show their special worship for the goddess of the moon. Later, when the immortals celebrated their children's birthdays, they also liked to put cakes on the table with many small lit candles on the cake. They also added the part of blowing out the candles. They believed that the burning candles had some kind of mysterious power. When people on their birthdays made a wish in their hearts, they could blow out all the candles in one breath to fulfill their wish. In the story, Artemis was replaced by Chang'e, which was naturally Yang Chendong's intention. He wanted the most mainstream culture in the world to be Han culture in the future. Even when talking about immortals, it should be mainly Han immortals. This little story was a kind of beginning of change. After Madame Shue finished her story, everyone was curious. Hu Yan, who was in the crowd, whispered in Yang Duo's ear, "He must have made these things." "Of course. What do you think? You'll be happy when you marry him. He has a lot of ideas. I promise you that you won't have the same birthday every year," Yang Duo said jokingly. These days, under the care of her sixth brother, Yang Chendong, she became more lively and cheerful. In the Wang family, there were enough maids for her to order around, so she didn't have to listen to anyone's orders. Over time, she slowly regained her original temperament, and was able to chat and laugh with Hu Yan, who was familiar with her. "Oh, Sister Duo, what are you talking about? You're so annoying." Hu Yan blushed when she heard this. She looked shy, but only she knew how much she wanted to marry Yang Chendong. In the middle of the venue, the three-tiered cake was already filled with 14 edible candles of different colors. After they were lit one by one, Princess Changde crossed her arms and closed her eyes to make a silent wish. On the side, Madame Snow and the 14 girls who had been prepared in advance sang softly together, "Happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you. Princess Xianxia made her wish amidst the singing of Happy Birthday. She opened her red lips and blew out the 14 candles with the help of Lady Xue and the other girls. Immediately, there was a round of enthusiastic applause. After making a wish and blowing out the candles, the next step was to cut the cake. A suitable knife had already been placed in Princess Xianxia's hands, and pieces of cake of the same size were sliced out. Princess Xianxia even gave the first 2 pieces to her imperial brother Zhu Qizhen and imperial sister-in-law Empress Qian. The other girls who had come to watch the ceremony were also given a small piece of cake according to their parents' official positions. Because there were so many people to share, a few more large pieces of cake were brought in. Even so, everyone could only eat a small piece. Fortunately, everyone quickly learned from Madame Snow and Mu Lily that the Immortal abode was already selling such delicious and beautiful cakes. This wasn't too disappointing. But at the same time, these women also made a decision. When they returned, they would immediately send someone to the Immortal abode to buy a cake for them to try. So what if it wasn't her birthday? Who said they couldn't eat something so delicious? The birthday song ended, and the cake was divided up. Logically speaking, this birthday banquet was already perfect. At the very least, it was unprecedented. However, in Yang Chendong's eyes, this was far from enough. He knew very well why the emperor had ordered him to host this banquet. It was obviously to make trouble for him. Even though he'd used all sorts of methods and novel things to prevent the emperor from finding an excuse to make trouble for him, there was no such thing as a thief. But there was no such thing as guarding against thieves all day long. He still decided to pay a little to alleviate the pressure the emperor was putting on him. Now, it's time to present the gifts. Below is a small token of my appreciation for Princess Xianxia's birthday. Please kindly accept it. As if by magic, a list of gifts appeared in Madame Snow's hands. When she saw that everyone's eyes were on her, including Emperor Zhu Qizhen's, she smiled sweetly and waved her hand. Her voice was as beautiful as an oriole's. To celebrate Princess Xianxia's birthday, Yang Chendong will send 10 mirrors, 50 boxes of transparent glasses, 4 in each box, 100 bottles of perfume, 500 sets of soap, 1,000 pieces of tissue paper. As the singing continued, many eunuchs from the palace carried the items on the list into the field. Soon, they were piled up like a small mountain. Emperor Zhu Qizhen, who was standing not far away, saw these things appear in front of him. His originally stern expression finally relaxed. These were all very popular items. Some of them were even sold in limited quantities. They were the kind that could not be bought even if one had money. It was not an exaggeration to say that they were worth hundreds of thousands of taels of silver. Obviously, this was Yang Chendong's attitude. Taking the opportunity of the princess's birthday, he took the initiative to give gifts and benefits to the royal family. In this way, the other officials could not say anything. With these items, whether he used them himself or used them to reward the officials, or even sold them for money, it was all up to him. With these gifts, Zhu Qizhen's mood became very good. He also decided not to do anything to Yang Chendong. To put it bluntly, he was the emperor. The world was his. The reason why he targeted Yang Chendong was that he envied him because he saw that he was in the limelight. Now that he had received benefits, of course, such thoughts were not so serious. The gifts that were presented naturally surprised the womenfolk. All of them widened their eyes and looked at the birthday girl, Princess Xianxia, with envy and jealousy. But at this time, as the star of today's ceremony, Princess Xianxia's eyes were fixed on a small and beautiful box that was not much bigger than a palm. It was a box with a delicate doll on the top. When the switch was flipped, the doll on the box began to rotate and move its limbs, and a song similar to the birthday song slowly sounded. To put it bluntly, this was a very common birthday music box in the future. The market price was only a dozen yuan. However, at this moment, it was undoubtedly the rarest and most precious gift that had appeared here. As soon as the box appeared, especially the function of automatically playing music, it immediately attracted everyone's attention. All the womenfolk looked at the box with admiration and amazement, and there was a strong desire in their eyes. What's this? How can it be so delicate and beautiful? Some women in the crowd could not help but exclaim. Thinking that it was a gift from Dong Shui, they hurriedly asked Madame Shui, who was holding the gift list. Madame Shui was in the limelight today. Although she used to be a top courtesan, in the eyes of many people, she was still a lowly existence. Especially in the eyes of these women, she was easily labeled as a vixen, a seductress, or a whore. She might have some reputation in her own home, but when she stood next to the daughters of these officials and dignitaries, she would be hated by everyone. Even in her dreams, Madame Shui had never imagined that one day she would be surrounded by so many nobles. Not only did these women not hate her, they even fought to talk to her. There were even quite a few who expressed their admiration. In the end, this was all because of Dong Shui. At this moment, Madame Shui was even more determined to follow in Dong Shui's footsteps and never leave his side. Yang Shi calls this a birthday music box. It can automatically play beautiful music. It's perfect for Princess Changda's birthday, Madame Shui explained to the women with a smile. I wonder if the Immortal abode sells such a good thing? After hearing that it was a birthday music box, the women were tempted and eager to know where they could buy such a good thing. Sorry, we don't have it. Under everyone's gaze, Madame Shui shook her head regretfully. As you said, this is a good thing. In fact, Yang Shima had specially sent people to bring it over from the sea. Just for this item, he had spent a total of 30,000 taels of silver. Moreover, this was a priceless item. Our great Ming dynasty only has one. Ah! It's so expensive. It's a little expensive, but compared to its effects, it's not that excessive. Aya, when will a man give me such a thing on my birthday? Then I'll be satisfied. That's, she's willing to give herself to him, isn't that right? This girl is in love. Ha ha ha. Suddenly, all kinds of voices came from the crowd. For a moment, some people even laughed and played together. In the crowd, Hu Yan happened to hear Madame Shui's words. A trace of disappointment flashed across her face. When she saw the birthday music box, she fell in love with it. She was wondering if she could get such a thing on her birthday. But when she heard that there was only one in the entire Great Ming dynasty, she knew that she was dreaming too much. Chapter 120. Compared to the other womenfolk's disappointment, Princess Xianxia was extremely happy. There was only one such good thing in the entire Great Ming dynasty. This showed the importance of this piece of music. Thus, she became even more curious about Yang Chendong, who gave her this gift. Why did he give her such an expensive gift? Was it only because she was a princess? But what if the other princesses also requested Yang Chendong to hold birthday banquets for them? What would he do? The birthday banquet ended with a small mountain of good things. Next, the womenfolk ate some other food and left the palace in 2s and 3s to return to their own residences. Hu Yan also took a carriage back to the Hu residence. As soon as she entered, the servant girl Xiaoqing greeted her with a mysterious expression. Miss, quickly go back to your room and take a look. The East Marshal has given you a big box. Big box? The East Marshal gave it to me. Hearing this, Hu Yan couldn't help but quicken her pace and trot back to her room. Then, she opened the box with curiosity and excitement. The first thing she saw was a birthday music box that was even bigger than the one Princess Xianxia received. On top of the box was a merry-go-round. After the switch was turned, the beautiful melody of a birthday song immediately sounded. Hu Yan was so happy that she couldn't bear to put it down. Miss, what is this? It can actually make its own sound, and it's so exquisite. Xiaoqing's voice suddenly sounded behind her. Hu Yan was so frightened that she turned around and covered her mouth. She clearly remembered what Madame Shui had said about this being the only one in the entire Great Ming Dynasty. Now, there was an even better birthday music box in her hands. Didn't Yang Chendong commit the crime of deceiving the emperor? Shaoqing, forget everything you saw just now. No matter who asks, you can't say that you've seen such a thing. Do you understand? Hu Yan said very seriously. Shaoqing was confused. In all her life, this was the first time she had seen her miss speak to her so seriously. After instructing Shaoqing not to talk nonsense, Hu Yan carried the beautiful music box to the bedside. She opened the quilt and dove in. By doing this, she could prevent the sound from spreading out, and she could enjoy the beautiful sound alone. Of course, the sweetness was still in her heart. Through this matter, she knew that Dong Shui had her in his heart, which was the happiest thing. While Hu Yan was thinking about Dong Shui, Yang Chendong had already left the imperial palace and returned to the Yang clan manor. As soon as they entered the manor's inner courtyard, Yang Chendong took off his fifth-rank official robes and said to Tiger's Mane, "Spread the news that I, young master, fell when I fell from my horse and needed to rest for a while." "Ah! Young master, did you really fall somewhere?" Tiger's Mane was shocked when he heard the news. He looked closely at Yang Chendong. "You were with him the whole way. When did you see the young master fall off his horse? This is just a way to get some peace and quiet." Yang Chendong smiled bitterly and shook his head. But he also knew that it was because Tiger's Mane was too concerned about him that he lost his basic judgment. Oh. Tiger's Mane smiled foolishly and scratched his head. He nodded and turned to go about his business. Not long after, many people in the capital knew that the sixth young master of the Yang clan fell because he was riding too fast. This matter was passed to Wang Zhen through the brocade guard. He was surprised at first, then shook his head with a smile. He's avoiding trouble. This is also good. It's not a good thing to be too outstanding. It seems that we should let the emperor know. When Wang Zhen went to see Zhu Qizhen and told him about Yang Chendong falling off his horse, the young emperor quickly figured out the crux of the matter. He smiled and said, "It seems that we are too concerned about Yang Chendong. This kind of concern is too much for him to bear. Forget it. Since it's like this, arrange for an imperial physician to take a look. Tell him that we will allow him to rest for a period of time." After holding a birthday banquet and sending gifts, Yang Chendong finally got rid of Zhu Qizhen's concern and was able to take a breather. He wanted to rest well and do what he wanted to do, but the situation did not allow it. In the 14th year of Zhengtong, Yeshen, the leader of the Mongolian Wara tribe, sent his younger brother to the capital of the Great Ming Dynasty as an envoy. On the surface, it was to pay tribute, but in reality, it was to ask for something. When it came to the Walla, there was one person that could not be avoided. He was the leader of the Walla, Yeshen. In the 3rd year of Zhengtong, the escaped Atai Khan was captured and killed by Tua Huan. The Mongolian plateau was reunited in the hands of the Walla. At this point, Tua Huan laid the foundation for his son, Yeshen. After Tua Huan passed away, Yeshen succeeded the throne. After Yeshen succeeded the throne, he called himself the imperial tutor, King Huai. All the tribes of the Walla submitted to Yeshen. As Yeshen's power and influence grew, the Tatar chief's title of Great Khan became an empty title. He could no longer restrain Yeshen. The Wara would pay tribute to the Ming dynasty every year. Tua Buhua and Yeshen, the ruler and subject, both sent envoys to the Ming dynasty. At this time, it was clear that Yeshen did not need to listen to Tua Buhua's instructions. At this point, the relationship between the Tartars and the Walla was similar to the current relationship between North and South Korea. As Yeshen was a cunning Walla leader, he was not as honest as the other Mongols. Instead, he was as cunning as a rabbit. As time went on, the power of the Tartars became smaller and smaller. Not long later, he controlled the Tartars and conquered Yulanhar, unifying the 3 Mongol tribes. On the grasslands, the Walla slowly became the strongest. After unifying the Mongols, Vachi wanted to restore the Yuan and unify the country. As a result, he harassed the Ming dynasty and became a huge problem in the north. Wang Zhen used power. Not only did he not strengthen the border, but he also accepted bribes from Vachi and smuggled goods with the Vachi nobles. For the sake of profits, Wang Zhen asked his best friend, Guo Jing, to make large amounts of arrows and give them to Vachi. Vachi would return good horses to Wang Zhen as a form of repayment. To get on the good side of Vachi, Wang Zhen also treated the envoys well and rewarded them. Ever since Vachi established a tribute relationship with the Ming dynasty, he would send envoys to the Ming dynasty with good horses and other goods. The Ming dynasty government would reward the envoys accordingly. Under normal circumstances, the reward would slightly exceed the value of the tribute. At the same time, the envoys had to be rewarded as well. As a result, Vachi was very willing to pay tribute to the Ming dynasty in order to obtain the wealth of the Central Plains. According to the original rules, Vachi could not send more than 50 envoys to the Ming dynasty each year. Later on, Vachi's greed for the rewards from the Ming dynasty grew, and the number of envoys increased day by day. For example, this time, the periodical king had brought a group of 2,500 envoys. In order to receive more rewards, he had falsely reported that it was 3,000 people. As soon as he entered the capital, the name he heard the most from the Walla spies in the capital was Yang Chendong. In the capital, when Yang Chendong was mentioned, the immortal abode had to be mentioned. The periodical king brought Captain Tuj, Er's group of 5 to this place, which was known as the most delicious and fun place in the capital. If one hadn't entered the immortal abode, they wouldn't have known that people could still live like this. The delicacies here were things they had never tasted before, the music they had never heard before, the drinks and desserts they had never seen before, and even the chess and cards they had never heard of before. He only wanted to come here to try the fresh food before leaving. Who would have thought that after entering this place in the afternoon, he would only leave reluctantly when it was time to close for the curfew? Even then, he still looked like he had not had enough of it. After half a day, when Tuj went to pay the bill, he found that they had spent a total of 120 taels of silver. They hadn't even had a chance to play, but they had already spent so much money. If they tried everything, they probably wouldn't even have enough silver in their pockets to pay the bill. When the group of 5 returned to the relay station, the periodical king still had a look of reminiscence on his face. Let's go there early tomorrow and find a good place to play for another day. This place is much better than our great steppe. General, the immortal abode isn't a good place, but it isn't a place we can afford to spend money on. We haven't even eaten anything today. 120 taels of silver is gone just like that. Tuj stood off to the side with a pained expression. What? It's that expensive? The periodical king's expression changed when he heard this. However, he immediately began to laugh loudly. I didn't expect the immortal abode to make so much money. Then this general must meet this Yang Jima. General wants to meet that eastern commander? Tuj didn't understand what the periodical king meant. He wore an unfathomable smile on his face. Correct. This general wants to bring him business and give him a chance to make a lot of money. Ha ha ha. Tuj didn't quite understand the periodical king's intentions, but since the general had said so, he had no choice but to make the arrangements. There weren't many people in Walla who were smarter than the general. As the captain of the guards, he was quite confident in this. Just like that, the next morning, a group of uninvited guests arrived outside the Yang clan manor. The guests didn't come in a soft sedan like the great Ming dynasty's officials. Instead, they came on large horses. They were dressed in the attire of a different race, and the blades at their waists hung unabashedly at their sides. It was as if they would draw their blades at the slightest disagreement. The periodical king purposely brought a group of 20 guards with him to the Yang clan manor. Their formation was quite impressive, causing Yang Wu, who was on duty, to frown. However, when Yang Chendong was training them, he had trained them to be courageous. He didn't seem to be afraid in the slightest. Instead, he boldly stood in front of the group and shouted, "This place belongs to the Crown Prince's steward, Sir Yang." Halt! The group naturally stopped. As the captain of the guards, Tuj, naturally went up to welcome them. With an arrogant expression, he shouted at Yang Wu, "Hurry up and inform your master that the periodical king of the Walla has arrived. Hurry up and come out to welcome him." Chapter 121. So the general has come to visit. Please wait for a moment and let my master know. Yang Wu cupped his fist and said politely. After that, he turned around and walked into the manor. However, the wooden door did not open and remained closed. "General, this." Seeing that Yang Lin did not have the intention to invite them in, Tuo Gu's face was filled with anger. "It's fine. We are new here and this East Marshal has lived in the southern part of the Ming Dynasty since he was young. It's normal that he doesn't know about us. As long as someone reports to him, he will meet us." The magazine king had a confident look on his face. Over the years, Walla had become stronger under the leadership of his brother, Yes Hen. Under his overflowing confidence, he looked down on the officials of the Ming Dynasty more and more. They were a bunch of people who only knew how to talk. What kind of ability could they have? Moreover, the person he was going to face was only a fifth-rank official. He really did not care about him. Yang Wu came to the inner courtyard of the Yang Manor and told the young master, Yang Chendong, about the magazine king's visit. Then, he stood respectfully at the side and waited. "Walla's people?" Yang Chendong laughed. He knew about the changes in the Tumu castle from history. Naturally, he had to know about Walla. After knowing that it was the magazine king who came, he did not have the slightest intention of meeting him. They were about to become opponents. If he were to get close to him, it would be hard to avoid attention. This was not what he wanted. "Tiger's mane, go and send them away. You should know what to do." Since becoming the head of the security bureau, Tiger's mane had a clearer understanding of the outside world. He was very clear about what kind of power Walla had and what kind of people they were. He was also very clear about the attitude of the imperial court towards them. Now that Yang Chendong said this, he immediately understood and nodded. "Young master, don't worry. Leave everything to me." After making his promise to Yang Chendong, Tiger's mane and Yang Wu walked out of the inner courtyard of the Yang residence while arranging for someone to report to the head of the eunuchs, Wang Zhen. No matter what, the other party had appeared as an emissary. If they didn't handle it well, it would be a diplomatic matter between the two countries. The matter might escalate, so they had to report it to the higher-ups. The staff of the security bureau quickly left the Xianxia village through a small path and headed straight for the capital. Tiger's mane and Yang Wu also walked to the outer gate and stood in front of the Walla emissary and his entourage. "Greetings, Envoy Walla." Tiger's mane greeted politely as soon as he approached. As the second-in-command of Yang Chendong's organization, Tiger's mane naturally had the aura of a superior as time passed. When he came from afar, he had never seen Yang Chendong. He thought that the person who came was the main character of the competition. He was about to return the greeting, but when he heard that the other party was just a servant, his eyes flashed with anger. No matter what, he was Walla's general and the younger brother of Chief Yes Hen. This time, he had already condescended to come to the Xianxia village. If Yang Chendong didn't come out and only sent a servant, how could he keep his face? After Tiger's mane reported his identity, he didn't look at the other party's ugly expression and said directly, "Envoy Walla, my lord was injured a few days ago when he was riding a horse. He is now recuperating in bed. It is really inconvenient for him to meet you. Please understand." "Injured? That's good. There are too many warriors on the grassland who get injured while riding a horse. I have good medicine to treat injuries. Let me see if the East Marshal's injury is better. How could the tournament king not see that this was just an excuse? He wanted to expose it on the spot. Finding a reason to refuse the other party instead of directly refusing to meet him was giving the other party face. However, the tournament king didn't know when to back down. Tiger's mane's face changed slightly and said, "This is not good. You are the envoy of Walla. My lord is an important official in the court. It's better not to meet in private to avoid unnecessary trouble." Tiger's mane repeatedly stopped him, but it angered the guard captain, Tugger. In his eyes, the general coming to the Xianxia village was giving enough face. Yang Chendong didn't want face, so he couldn't blame him for speaking rudely. Ha ha ha, it's really a joke. He is just an idle official. The crown prince of the Ming dynasty is still a baby. What's the use of washing horses? How can he become an important official? It's really funny to stick gold on his face like this. Tugger looked up to the sky and laughed, causing the guards following him to also laugh. Swoosh! A murderous aura rushed out with Jianghu as the center, and rushed forward at a rapid speed. He clenched his fists and glared angrily, as if he was going to start a massacre at any time. Stop! Tiger's mane was the first to feel the murderous aura. He quickly used a voice that only the two of them could hear to stop it. Someone dared to slander the young master. As a subordinate, of course, he was furious. However, the person in front of him wasn't a nobody. He was the envoy of Walla. If they were all killed here, the consequences would be far beyond what they could bear. Moreover, the matter had already been reported to Wang Zhen. Presumably, there would be people coming to the Xianxia village soon. If they came and saw a ground full of corpses, they wouldn't be able to explain themselves even if they had 1,000 mouths. After stopping Yang Wu and telling him to stop, Hu Mang's expression darkened. Whether or not my lord is an important official of the court is not something a mere guard captain like you can judge. You don't have the qualifications to do so. Please pay attention to your words and actions. Don't provoke any displeasure because of a slip of the tongue. If there are any consequences because of this, I'm afraid you will have to bear it alone. However, I don't know if a small guard like you is able to bear it. He had just said that His Excellency was not an important official, and here he was being looked down upon as a guard. Tuogu immediately looked at Hu Mang with a face full of resentment. You look down on a guard like this, then you should be very capable, right? However, 1,000 words can't compare to a fight. I just don't know if you have the guts to do so. Tugger rolled up his sleeves, intentionally revealing his thick and strong arms. When he looked at Tiger's mane, he was eager to fight. As the guard captain of the competition king, he was naturally a person with outstanding skills. This was also what he was most proud of. Now that he was showing his strongest side, Tugger was full of confidence. He was even prepared to beat Tiger's mane up until he was looking for his teeth on the ground if he agreed. The Walla were a Mongolian people in the west. They grew up on horses, and fighting bravely was one of the ways they usually solved problems. The tall and sturdy Tugger intentionally revealed the muscles on his arms and looked at Tiger's mane provocatively. However, he didn't know that this performance made him look like a clown in the eyes of others. Tiger's mane and the first batch of Ling Feng were all taught by Yang Chendong. Unlike many other martial arts that were just for show, what he taught was more about killing people. In Yang Chendong's words, war has always been cruel. It won't take care of you just because you're on the side of justice. Similarly, it won't ignore your weakness because you're on the right side. In the end, a real war is about killing and being killed. How to protect yourself while killing is the most important thing. As for other things, they are just fleeting clouds. Under such guidance, Tiger's mane and the others were taught killing moves. The goal of their training was to inflict the greatest damage to the opponent in the shortest amount of time and suppress the opponent's strength and ability. Tugger was just like this. Although he was tall and sturdy, he mostly relied on strength to fight. He was particular about defeating 10 people with strength. If this kind of person was to fight against a brute, he would have a huge advantage. However, when facing the agile Leng Feng members who knew the structure of the human body and knew the weaknesses of the human body, he was too far behind. If they really fought, the opponent only needed to reveal a small flaw, and Tiger's mane would strike with lightning speed and kill the opponent directly. In this way, Tugger's arrogance was like a clown in Tiger's mane's eyes. Naturally, he would ignore him. Tiger's mane's disregard, in Tugger's eyes, he thought that the other party was afraid. He laughed maniacally like a general who had already won the battle. When he thought that his momentum had shocked Tiger's mane and the others, he gave a look to his subordinates and prepared to break into the Yang family manor. Just when Tugger thought that he had the situation under control and wanted to perform well in front of his master, the tournament king, he suddenly heard the sound of horse hooves. Then, behind them, a group of about 50 iron cloak guards wearing flying suits approached from afar. The sudden appearance of the Ming Dynasty's brocade guards forced Tugger, who was about to make a move, to stand still. He even intentionally glanced at General Wang beside him. "Don't be afraid. We didn't do anything wrong. Even if the Ming Dynasty's emperor came, what can he do?" The tournament king said arrogantly. Just from this sentence, it could be seen that in Walla's bones, they clearly looked down on the Ming Dynasty's army and even the Ming Dynasty's ruler, Ming Yingzong Zhu Qizhen. Speaking of which, it wasn't that the Walla were arrogant. In fact, in this world, the strong were respected. Just like the Ming Dynasty's Emperor Chengzu's 5 expeditions to the Mongols, the Walla at that time were very respectful to the Ming Dynasty. However, in these years, the Ming Dynasty had changed 3 emperors and no longer fought with the Walla. As time passed, they forgot how powerful the Ming Dynasty was. This was a good example of the saying, "Weak countries have no diplomacy." Tiger's mane had already seen through Tugger's arrogance and their intention to make a move. In order to ensure the young master's absolute safety, he had already made a gesture when no one was paying attention. No one knew that not far away, Yang Chendong's personal guard, Dao Xiao, had been paying attention to all the movements here. Even the safety of the Type 95 in their hands was unlocked and a silencer was installed. They were only waiting for an order to quickly eliminate the Walla team that came to provoke the Yang family manor. Chapter 122. This was the huge difference between modern weaponry and cold weaponry. It was able to quietly finish off the opponent. Although there might be some trouble afterwards, as long as the scene was cleaned up, even if there were suspicions, there would be nothing they could do if they couldn't find any evidence. But before Tiger's man could give the order, the embroidered uniform guard had already arrived. This speed was enough to show just how important Yang Chendong was to Wang Zhen. As expected, there were no eternal friends, only eternal interests. After investing so much money into the immortal abode, if anyone wanted to harm the East Marshal, Wang Zhen's attitude would be the first thing they would have to deal with. The embroidered uniform guard had arrived, led by a Jianghu official who was also Wang Zhen's trusted aide, Tang Tong. The order that Tang Tong received was to bring the tile emissaries back to the capital. She also strictly ordered the soldiers guarding the city gates to not allow them to leave the city as they pleased. They were also not allowed to appear in the Yangjia manor a second time and cause trouble. After receiving this order, Tang Tong rode over with his men. When he saw that the Walla emissaries were still pacing back and forth outside the gates of the Yang clan manor, he couldn't help but sigh in relief. Soon after, he rushed over with a look of disgust on his face. Tang Tong, who had more than double the number of people, immediately took control of the situation. First, he surrounded Tuj and the others. Then, with a stern face, he sternly said, "You came to my Ming dynasty with the status of a vassal state to pay tribute, so you should abide by the rules here. How can you leave the capital without asking for permission and come to the residence of Lord Yang? Just what are you trying to do?" This Tang Tong actually had some tricks up his sleeve. At the very least, he knew how to gain the upper hand by a show of strength. According to the rules, emissaries could enjoy a certain amount of freedom when entering another country, but only within a certain range. If they wanted to go beyond this range, they had to report it. But because the envoys from Vala came every year, as time passed, no one really paid attention to this rule. But this didn't mean that it didn't exist. At the very least, Tang Tong's words were reasonable, and Tuj didn't know how to respond. He could only look at the magazine king to see his master's opinion. The periodical king saw that the embroidered uniform guards had arrived not long after he arrived. He knew that this Yang Chendong's power was not small. Since he wasn't prepared enough and had overstepped his boundaries, he wouldn't be able to gain anything by staying here. This general only saw that the scenery here was not bad and couldn't help but come here. Since the Ming dynasty has rules, then let's just go back. To everyone's surprise, the magazine king compromised. His attitude was extremely sincere, as if he had really come here casually. After saying this, he was the first to turn and return to the capital, Tuj and the other guards hurriedly following. Soon, they disappeared from everyone's sight, which caught Tang Tong off guard. As one of Wang Zhen's confidants, he naturally knew his master's attitude towards Walla. In the past, every time he came to pay tribute, he would give his master a lot of gold and silver. But this time, he didn't bring any gifts either because he forgot or because of other reasons. This already made his master a little unhappy. This time, Tang Tong came here with the intention of making things difficult for the magazine king and reminding him. But he didn't expect that the magazine king would leave so straightforwardly. From the beginning to the end, he didn't even have the slightest intention of confronting him, which made Tang Tong unable to find a place to say anything. Tang Tong was a little dissatisfied that the matter was resolved so easily. This should have been an opportunity to perform meritorious deeds, but now he missed it. He was unhappy, but he didn't say anything to Tiger's Mane. He only said that if anyone came to the Yang family manor to cause trouble in the future, he should send someone to inform him and he would deal with it. Then, he turned and left with the embroidered uniform guards. After Tiger's Mane saw Tang Tong and the others off, he returned to the manor and reported everything to Yang Chendong in detail. Yang Chendong listened to Tiger's Mane's report with a calm expression. After a while, he nodded and said, "I understand." After this incident, the magazine king probably won't come to the Yang family manor to cause trouble. However, he won't give up so easily. Inform the immortal abode and sky beyond sky to be more careful. Tell Yang Si to be more alert. At the same time, send Daoxiao's second squad over, just in case. Young master, now that Daoxiao's second squad has left, there's only Qiu V's first squad left. If anything happens, your safety. Tiger's Mane said with some worry. This young master's safety is naturally not an issue. If something really happens, don't I still have you guys? Besides, even if something really does happen, it's not like you don't know this young master's strength. If you want to touch me, who knows if there's anyone in the world who can do it? Yang Chendong's voice was filled with confidence. With his ability to enter the warehouse at any time, and even have a helicopter appear at any time, anyone who wanted to capture him would have to be willing. Otherwise, even an entire army wouldn't be able to do anything to him. But young master. Although Tiger's Mane was filled with confidence in Yang Chendong, he didn't want to see the young master take any risks. He asked carefully, "Young master, we've already completed our initial preparations in the capital. Much of the work has already begun, but we're still lacking manpower. Do you think it's possible to transfer some people over from Crimson City? This is also for the sake of better future development." Yang Chendong wasn't someone who couldn't listen to other people's opinions. On the contrary, he always believed that there was a limit to a person's wisdom. Only by gathering the wisdom of the masses could many things be done more perfectly. "Okay, we'll do as you say. Transfer a company of Cold Vanguard from Crimson City, as well as the Ghost Shadow Sniper Squad. Yang Chendong naturally had his own considerations for transferring the Ghost Shadow Sniper Squad over. Seeing that it wouldn't be long before the Tumu Castle incident happened, if they didn't have enough strength, they wouldn't be able to perform perfectly in many things. Hearing that he could transfer 100 Cold Vanguard and even the Ghost Shadow Sniper Squad, Tiger's Mane's face lit up with joy. He let out a long sigh of relief and hurriedly agreed, turning around to make arrangements. Back to the competition king. Yangjia village's fruitless return made him extremely annoyed. He originally thought that a small Ming Dynasty rank 5 official would feel honored and open the door to welcome him and treat him as a guest. Didn't people say that the Han people were a nation of etiquette? However, why did Yang Chendong not want to see him at all? Even after knowing that he had appeared, he immediately informed the genie guards. Why did he draw the line between them and be so careful? Was this his careful nature? Or did he feel something? The current Ming Dynasty and Walla's relationship wasn't bad, at least on the surface. As for deep down, although his brother Yeshen had the intention to swallow up the Ming Dynasty and was even preparing in the dark, what kind of secret matter was that? Even in Walla, very few people knew about it. Could Yang Chendong see that something was wrong? He had a guilty conscience, and everyone he saw was a guilty conscience. This was the competition king's thoughts. It was precisely because the Vara clan was about to make a move that he didn't give Wang Zhen any gifts as usual when he came to the Ming Dynasty to pay tribute. Since they were about to become enemies, there was no point in giving anything. Even this time's tribute was to deceive the Ming Dynasty and prepare for the Walla's surprise attack. Currently, the Ming Dynasty seemed to know nothing about this. At the very least, there was no change in how they were received. Even the officials of the Ming Dynasty's Ministry of Rites were chatting and laughing as usual. This wasn't something that could be faked. Everything was normal. Only Yang Chendong's behavior was so unapproachable. The competition king couldn't help but think too much about it. How about this? Take some people to the Shini residence and find out how this Eastern commander is going to deal with it. The competition king felt that he still needed to investigate Yang Chendong and see how he could deal with it. Since he couldn't go to the Yang family village, then he'd go to the Immortal abode. Yes. Tuo Gu was feeling gloomy. Today's matter had made him lose face, but when he heard the general's orders, he was unable to contain his joy. He didn't have much ability to deal with things peacefully, but when it came to causing trouble, it couldn't be any easier. It was a good opportunity to vent his anger and let the Eastern commander know what the consequences of angering the Walla were. The Immortal abode was bustling with people, and business was booming. Even the ordinary tables in the main hall were in short supply. If one wanted to eat here without a membership card or a reservation, they would often have to line up outside to experience the treatment and conditions. Sometimes, when business was booming, even lining up didn't mean anything. Often, when it was time to close, there were still many cases of people not being able to get in line. Even so, there were still many people who flocked to this place like a flock of ducks. They would rather line up, even if they didn't know whether or not they'd be able to get in line. This scene made the other restaurants and inns incredibly envious. However, their financial strength was far from enough. They did not have fresh songs and dances, nor did they have the unique taste of delicious delicacies. They also did not have transparent glass, unique private rooms, and well-trained service staff who were very skilled in dealing with people and had different styles. The hardware and software weren't on the same level. Even when the other restaurants saw how popular the Immortal abode was, they couldn't think of anything else other than envy and jealousy. But today, at noon, the exciting scene they'd been looking forward to for a long time had happened. Someone had actually come to the Immortal abode to cause trouble because of a problem with a table. This made the other restaurants incredibly excited. Even if they couldn't obtain any benefits from seeing the Immortal abode in trouble, it was still enough to comfort them. Chapter 123. Ever since the Immortal Abode opened for business, even the Emperor and Empress had personally attended. Numerous civil and military officials had also come to congratulate them. In addition, the embroidered uniform guard could appear at any time, reducing the chances of someone causing trouble to a minimum. Even if there were customers who were dissatisfied with not being able to sit at a table, they could only endure due to the reputation of the Immortal Abode. As time passed, the guests who came here got used to it. There were even some who used this as an excuse to take advantage of the situation. For example, when someone offended an enemy, owed money, or was on the wrong side of the road, the Immortal Abode would become their place of refuge. Often, as long as they stood in line, no matter how deep their hatred was, they wouldn't dare to make a move here. In this kind of environment, the employees of the Immortal Abode naturally developed a sense of security. For example, the two supervisors, Mu Lily and Cui Na, used to be the procuress of the 100 Flowers Hall and 9 Arts Workshop. They used to compete in secret. Now that they were both supervisors of the Immortal Abode, they began to compare themselves in secret. Fortunately, Dong Shui was there to suppress them, so they didn't dare to go too far. On the contrary, they fought over each other, all for the sake of leaving a better impression in Dong Shui's heart. Although the supervisors of the Immortal Abode had a lot of work to do, and they had to interact with a lot of customers every day, the good thing was that everyone gave them enough face. At the very least, they were in a cheerful mood. As a result, the two supervisors didn't have to act as if they were inferior to others. On the contrary, everyone's status was equal here. There were even some who would say good things in front of them and secretly give them money in order to get a position faster. The Immortal Abode had long since established a rule that no employee was allowed to accept tips. If they were caught doing so, they would be fired immediately, with no room for negotiation. Because of this, only 2 people had been caught since the opening of the Immortal Abode. Their faces were full of regret as they begged for mercy. Even if they knelt on the ground, it did not change their ending at all. This was also a great deterrent to the other staff members here. Even the 2 foremen did not dare to take a single silver coin for themselves. In fact, Yang Chendong had always treated everyone who worked for him well. For many people, being provided with food, clothing, and money was already a good thing that fell from the sky. There were also some people who were selfish and greedy beyond measure. It was no wonder that they were ruthlessly dealt with. Since they couldn't take tips, nice words poured in like a tide. As the foreman, Mu Lily and Cui Na felt as if they were bathing in the sun all day long. They were in a good mood. Mu Lily was on duty today. As the foreman, she did her best to arrange everything. Until a waitress ran in front of her and said that there was a customer in the line outside who had an extremely bad attitude. He was so bad that the 2 waitresses in charge of the line were scolded to the point of crying. "There's such a thing? Bring me over to take a look." Mu Lily was astonished to hear that there were people causing trouble outside the Immortal Abode. In her eyes, what kind of place was this? Even the Emperor and Empress approved of it, and the officials of the imperial court would visit from time to time. There was actually someone who dared to say such filthy things here? Did they really eat a bear's heart or a leopard's gall? Mu Lily was a bit confused, and even a bit curious. She wanted to see just who had the guts to cause trouble outside the Immortal Abode. She walked over to the long line outside the entrance with the female attendant. As soon as she arrived, she saw a waitress walk up to her with a tear-stained face. "Sister Lily, it's that person. His words are so unpleasant to hear. We called a male waiter over to mediate, but he even knocked him to the ground." "What? He dares to hit people?" Mu Lily's expression was full of shock when she heard this. In her eyes, anyone who dared to cause trouble here already didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. What kind of confidence did he have to actually dare to injure people? Or was he really just a brute without any schemes? Wasn't he afraid of being captured by the embroidered uniform guard and imprisoned? With all kinds of confusion and doubt in her mind, she followed the two waitresses to the front of the long line, where she saw the brawny man, Tuj, spittle flying all over the place. Tuj had come here to cause trouble. After receiving General Wang's orders, he'd made his preparations and arrived at the Immortal abode at noon the next day. His original plan had been to look for trouble after entering the Immortal abode. He hadn't expected that he'd be forced to wait in line because he hadn't made an appointment in advance and didn't have a membership card on him. He was the captain of a dignified general's bodyguard. Even in the Walla, he was an existence that could do as he pleased. Very few people dared to not give him face. How could he not be angry when he was given the cold shoulder here? Add to that the fact that he'd come here to cause trouble in the first place, he immediately flew into a rage. He began to spout nonsense in the queue, cursing the Immortal abode and saying that they were bullying their customers. He even encouraged others to stop spending money here. Those who could afford to spend money in the Immortal abode were either wealthy or respectable. What they wanted was face. Naturally, they wouldn't be swayed by Tuj's words. They only looked at him as if they were watching a show. Everyone had noticed that there were embroidered uniform guard members nearby. However, they didn't immediately stop this man in foreign clothing. It seemed like they were waiting for some kind of order. The embroidered uniform guard really did want to arrest him, but it was Tuj's attire that allowed them to recognize him as someone from the Walla. It was very likely that he was part of the diplomatic mission. When it came to diplomatic matters, the embroidered uniform guard didn't dare to act recklessly. They were truly the epitome of what it meant to be an expert in civil wars, but an amateur in foreign wars. By the time Mu Lily arrived, this was the scene that greeted her. Tuogu was stomping her feet and cursing something, surrounded by a crowd of onlookers. One of the Immortal abode's attendants had been beaten up, and blood was flowing from his nose. He glared angrily at Tuogu with the help of a waitress. "What are you doing? Do you know where you are? If you don't explain yourself today, I'll report you to the authorities and have you arrested." Mu Lily looked at the injured waiter from afar. Her eyes flashed with extreme anger. Ever since she'd been promoted to a member of the House of Good Children, she'd been able to speak with many people as equals. She no longer feared the authorities. On the contrary, when she encountered a problem, she would report it to the authorities. Suddenly, an extremely beautiful woman had appeared to criticize him. Even though she wasn't young anymore, she was still in her mid-20s. In Tuj's eyes, she was still extremely attractive. He only felt that the woman in front of him was 100 times prettier than the prostitute he'd found in the red light district last night. His male hormones had officially come online. "Yo, such a beautiful woman wants to work here to earn money? Why don't you follow this captain? I guarantee that you'll live a good life in the future. What do you think?" Tuj's eyes shone brightly. He was like a wolf who'd spotted a sheep. He approached her step by step. She'd interacted with all kinds of men over the years, so she was naturally no stranger to this kind of gaze. Mu Lily sensed a trace of threat, and her aura involuntarily dropped. She took a few steps back, pretending to be unyielding as she said, "What are you trying to do? Let me tell you, I'm a commoner from the Ming Dynasty. I'm from a good family. You'd best have some self-respect." "Huh, a good family is good. A good family is clean. I like it." Tuj's brain was currently overtaken by lust. How could he care about such rules? All he wanted to do was to hug Mu Lily in his arms and dote on her. "What are you doing?" Someone in the crowd noticed that something wasn't right. A young man dressed like a scholar took advantage of his tall stature to block Tuj's path. He wanted to stop Tuj's unbearable behavior and reason with him. Tuj felt like he was only a few steps away from touching Mu Lily. However, a figure suddenly appeared in front of him. In a fit of anger, he drew his sword without any explanation and slashed it forward. Holy shit! The scholar's eyesight wasn't bad. When he saw the blade coming, he hurriedly dodged to the side, narrowly avoiding the attack. However, a corner of his robe had been cut off by the blade. It fluttered in the air, as if to tell the crowd that Tuj's anger and killing intent had been truly unleashed. From drawing his sword to slashing it out, the crowd was scared witless. After seeing this person from the Walla's diplomatic mission get serious, no one dared to meddle in this matter. Instead, they all scattered, putting some distance between themselves and the Immortal Abode's main entrance. In this way, Mu Lily and the two attendants who followed her were completely exposed. Tuj's actions just now didn't seem to be inappropriate in the slightest. In the Walla, one's fists were the absolute law. Apart from the women of the leaders and generals, any other woman could be forcefully snatched away with their fists. Oftentimes, when something like this happened, people would call it a man's action. Not only would he not be punished, he would even be praised. Being captivated by Mu Lily, Tuj's current location was now the Walla's territory. The only thought in his mind was to steal this woman away. He didn't care about anything else at all. Someone come, help. Seeing that there was no distance between her and Tuogu, Mu Lily lost her head out of fear and didn't forget to shout loudly. Her gaze also turned towards the embroidered uniform guards wearing flying fish robes not far away. Unfortunately, the embroidered uniform guard acted as if they didn't see what was happening. They'd already arranged for someone to report the incident to their superiors. They wouldn't act rashly until they received orders. Even if Tuj's actions were to kill someone on the street, as a member of the diplomatic mission, he didn't necessarily have to follow the Great Ming Dynasty's laws. Chapter 124. The brocade robe's indifference caused Mu Lily's expression to change again and again. Her originally rosy cheeks were now drained of color, and her complexion paled considerably. An ominous thought appeared in her mind. It seemed that she was definitely going to suffer a loss today. If she were to be taken away by this outsider on the streets, the consequences would be self-evident. If that were to happen, she might as well die. Mu Lily was someone who had seen the world. When she was young, she had once been a courtesan. Who knew how many men had set their sights on her, but not a single one had succeeded. It was clear that she still had some tricks up her sleeve, and even her personality was firm and unyielding. And now, seeing that she couldn't even rely on the soldiers, she prepared to bite off her tongue and commit suicide in a fit of anger. Even if she were to die here, she couldn't let anyone take her away and ruin her innocence. Mu Lily's eyes flashed with a trace of ruthlessness. She wanted to take her own life, but at this moment, Tuogu's thick and solid right hand was already in front of her. Seeing that it was about to touch her snow-white skin, Mu Lily closed her eyes, waiting for the final moment to take her own life. However, what happened next didn't happen. Instead, she heard the muffled sound of a fist, followed by a cry of pain. When she opened her eyes, the first thing she saw was Yang pulling back his fist and Tuogi falling to the ground. This move also caused Dao Xiao and his team members, who had been hiding in the shadows, to stop what they were doing. They had been arranged here precisely because Yang Chendong had sensed that something was about to happen. In order to complete his mission, Dao Xiao was prepared to open fire. However, he also knew that if he opened fire, things would become complicated. Just as he was hesitating and making up his mind to open fire, Yang was one step ahead of him. Yang was a trusted person. He was one of the Dong Shuai's servants, and was in charge of the security of this place. Normally, he would enter the immortal abode and sky beyond heaven more often than the other servants, but his behavior was always extremely ordinary. Even when he was interacting with others, he was extremely polite. Over time, after everyone saw that he did not have the slightest arrogance, they started to get along with him. Occasionally, they would even make lewd jokes, which often made this young man, who had just turned 20, blush. He was just an ordinary servant. If he wasn't Dong Shuai's subordinate, he wouldn't have received any attention. However, such an ordinary person was able to knock Tugger down to the ground with a single punch. This extremely contrasting scene caused Mu Lily's beautiful eyes to widen in shock. At the same time, her face was filled with disbelief. Tugger was knocked down to the ground with a single punch. Furthermore, he was beaten in front of a beauty. This made him feel that he had lost all his face. He snarled and climbed up again. Holding the scimitar in his right hand, he glared at Xianxia. "Brat, you dare to meddle in your grandpa's business? Go to hell." In the next instant, the scimitar flashed with white light as it cut through the air and arrived at Xiaxia's chest. This strike was both fast and fierce. Many people with poor eyesight only saw the flash of white light. Because of their nervousness, many people clenched their fists tightly, displaying the nervousness and excitement in their hearts. There were even a few people who reached out with their right hand to press against their hearts, as if their hearts would jump out of their bodies if they didn't do so. Compared to these people, Mu Lily's reaction was even more extreme. She directly let out a cry of alarm. She was truly worried that Xianxia would die because of this. If that happened, even if she bit off her tongue and committed suicide, she still wouldn't be able to make up for her mistake. The scimitar slashed through the air in front of him, followed by a cry of alarm behind him. However, none of this prevented Xianxia from making an accurate judgment. Under his inhuman training, he had long since mastered the ability to maintain a steady state of mind. When the scimitar slashed over, he merely leaned his body slightly to the side and narrowly dodged the sharp edge of the scimitar. Following that, he rushed forward like an arrow. His right hand changed from a fist to a palm as he moved forward, grabbing Tugger's right hand that was holding the scimitar. Following that, before anyone could react, he clenched his fist, twisted his wrist, lifted his arm, and spun his hand around to raise Tugger's right arm high up in the air. Then, he exerted some force. Accompanied by a crisp, "Kacha" sound, Tugger's right arm was instantly dislocated, causing Tugger to cry out in pain once again. This series of actions was executed extremely beautifully. Regardless of whether it was the timing of the attack or the intensity of the attack, they were all extremely suitable. It gave people the feeling that the outcome of the battle was decided with just a single exchange of blows. Tugger, who looked taller and fiercer, cried out in pain as he hugged his arm. He was like a fat pig that had been slashed but didn't die. After doing all this, Xianxia confidently took 2 steps back and stood back at his original position. It was as if he hadn't made a move at all. Only when he saw Tugger crying out in pain and losing his ability to fight, did Xianxia slowly turn around and come to Mu Lily's side. He extended his right arm to support the trembling Mu Lily and gave her a smile. This smile was like the sun in the cold winter, illuminating Mu Lily's heart. She swore that she had seen many smiles in her life, but none of them were as sincere as the one in front of her eyes. It didn't give her the feeling that her heart was shaken. This smile caused Mu Lily's amorous heart to ripple. Her face turned crimson and her eyes flashed with a blurred color like that of a drunk person. As if he had also felt the changes in Mu Lily's body, Xianxia's face turned red. While feeling his heartbeat suddenly accelerate, he hurriedly turned his head to the side and looked at the 2 female attendants who were also in a daze. He said, "Why aren't you sending Big Sister Mu back to her room to rest?" "Oh, yes, yes." After seeing Xiaxia's performance just now, the 2 attendants' attitudes towards him underwent a qualitative change. When they heard his words, they didn't dare hesitate in the slightest. They agreed and pulled Mu Lily, whose body was burning hot, away from this place. Just as Mu Lily and the others entered the Immortal abode, a group of embroidered uniform guards arrived not too far away. They had received orders to stop Tugger from causing trouble here. However, when they saw that the troublemaker had already been taught a lesson, they casually berated him a few times before walking up to Tugger and leaving. As he watched the embroidered uniform guards leave, Xiaxia's intuition told him that this matter wouldn't end just like that. After all, he had dealt with Tugger on the streets. With the embroidered uniform guard's personality, he probably wouldn't let this matter rest so easily. It seemed like he could only immediately report this matter to the young master and let the Dong Shui make a decision. Tugger's arm was reattached by an experienced member of the embroidered uniform guard. Only then did the pain lessen significantly. Now that his body was no longer in so much pain, he returned to his previous arrogant self. He bluntly asked why the embroidered uniform guard hadn't taken down the person who had injured him. Just as Tugger was criticizing the embroidered uniform guard for their unfairness, the embroidered uniform guard appeared. Beside him was a eunuch dressed in eunuch robes. Moreover, from the way the others treated him, it was clear that this person's status wasn't low. His name was Qian Sengbao, and he was the supervising eunuch of the Imperial Horse Directorate. He could be considered a well-known figure among the eunuchs. Of the 24 eunuchs of the Ming Dynasty, the Ceremony Directorate and the Imperial Horse Directorate were the most important. The Ceremony Directorate was the first of the 12 directorates, and it was often in conflict with the Prime Minister. Although the Imperial Horse Directorate was the last to be established, it was in charge of matters related to the Ministry of War, such as the Imperial Horse Directorate. Even Wang Zhen wasn't able to hide the truth from the eunuchs. There were many people below him who didn't completely listen to his orders. For example, the eunuchs Jin Ing and Gao Rang of the Ceremony Directorate often didn't listen to his orders. There was also this Qian Sengbao. Speaking of Qian Sengbao, he was also deeply trusted by Zhu Qizhen. He had once given an imperial edict to Wang Zhen's nephew, Wang Lin, to the embroidered uniform guard commander Qian Sengbao, and to the eunuchs Qian Sengbao's nephew, Qian Liang, Gao Rang's nephew, Gao Yu, Chao Jixiang's brother, Chao Zheng, and Kai Zhong's nephew, Kai Gu. From this, it could be seen that Qian Sengbao was greatly favored by the emperor. After being favored by the emperor, he became the supervising eunuch of the Imperial Horse Directorate. His position was second only to the head eunuch of the Imperial Horse Directorate, Chen Guan. Because this matter involved an envoy, and because weapons were used, Qian Sengbao hurried over to deal with it. He just happened to meet the embroidered uniform guard at the door. Knowing that the embroidered uniform guard was a special envoy from the Walla, Qian Sengbao very courteously followed him to see Tugger. They just happened to hear him shouting. "Eunuch Qian, you've already heard the matter. My Walla envoy was beaten up by a commoner of the Ming Dynasty. Shouldn't you give us an explanation?" The embroidered uniform guard commander's face was filled with anger. This was the same as slapping his face. If he couldn't get an explanation, how could he still have the face to lead the envoy? Qian Sengbao originally wanted to say that he received news that Tugger attacked first, and because of this, he almost injured a commoner of the Ming Dynasty. However, when he thought about how no lives were lost, and the one who was injured was Tugger, he felt that he had already earned some face. Since that was the case, it wasn't a big deal to hand over the person who beat him up and end this fight. After all, the Ming Dynasty and the Walla still valued peace. Tang Qianhu, who did it? Qian Sengbao saw the embroidered uniform guard's Tang Tong and waved his hand to call him over. Tang Tong was in charge of monitoring the envoy. Previously, when the embroidered uniform guard commander went to Yangjia village, he was the one who showed up. This time, when Tugger was beaten up, he was still the one who came forward to investigate the matter. Qian Sengbao's status was higher than Tang Tong's. Since the other party asked, Tang Tong couldn't not answer. After thinking for a moment, he replied, "I heard that it was done by one of Yang Shima's servants." Yang Shima? Yang Chendong? That Dong Shui? Qian Sengbao chuckled, and an imperceptible coldness flashed through his eyes. Yang Chendong's name could be said to be well known in the capital, and he was even in the limelight. Not only was he very talented, he was also very rich. He had also received Zhu Qizhen's recognition, and had a good relationship with Wang Zhen, so everything he did seemed to go smoothly. Chapter 125. But at the same time, because he was too close to Wang Zhen, he attracted the displeasure of some other eunuchs. Qian Sengbao was one of them. Originally, because the emperor valued him, especially Princess Changda's birthday, it was completely arranged by Yang Chendong. It was the first time in the history of the Ming dynasty that a foreign minister was arranged for the princess' birthday. Some people who had ideas didn't dare to act rashly. In addition, he had a good relationship with Wang Zhen, so Qian Sengbao couldn't find a suitable reason to find trouble with Yang Chendong. Now, this person's servant was actually involved in this matter. As a result, it was perfectly justifiable to arrest this servant. At that time, if this Yang Chendong was sensible, he would take out a large sum of money and give it to Qian Sengbao. If not, Qian Sengbao would destroy his prestige. No matter what, Walla's envoy was injured this time. We have to give him an explanation. Should Qianhu Tang bring people to call the servant? Of course, we're just investigating the truth of the matter. We're not saying that he's guilty. Qian Sengbao had a sinister smile on his face, as if everything was for the public good. Asking Tang Tong to arrest Yang Chendong's servant was to destroy the relationship between Dong Shuai and Wang Zhen. Who didn't know that Tang Tong was eunuch Wang Zhen's subordinate? Qian Sengbao was wholeheartedly for the public, and he came out in front of Walla's envoy. He didn't have to worry that Tang Tong wouldn't do it. Otherwise, it would be openly disobeying the orders of his superior. Even if a lawsuit was brought to the emperor, Wang Zhen wouldn't be able to plead for his servant. Tang Tong wasn't stupid at all. On the contrary, he was very shrewd. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to become a Qianhu. How could he not see Qian Sengbao's intention? However, the situation was like this. He had no other choice but to do it. He thought that if he explained properly when he went to catch the servant, he would not destroy the relationship between eunuch Wang and Dong Shuai. After all, they were both beneficial if they cooperated, and harmful if they separated. Presumably, Dong Shuai should be very clear about this point. He would definitely not destroy the harmony between everyone because of a servant. Alright, I'll go capture them right away. After receiving the order, Tang Tong led her subordinates towards the Immortal abode. The Immortal abode wasn't affected by what was happening outside. What happened outside the gate was just one of the topics that everyone talked about. Compared to most people's indifference, Mu Lily was extremely nervous. After a while, her heart slowly calmed down. Then, she began to worry about Yang Si. Wounding Tile's messenger in the middle of the street was a serious crime. She didn't know how a mere servant like him could be so skilled. This time, he had caused such a big mess. He wondered if anything would happen to him. Although Dong Shuai was very capable, this was only a servant's accident. How much effort would he put in? If Yang Si was punished because of her, or even arrested by the brocade guard, what would she do? Just when Mu Lily was blaming herself, Madame Snow came to her room to rest. When she smiled, 2 shallow dimples appeared on her cheeks. With Dong Shuai's nourishment, she looked even more indescribably beautiful. Sister Mu, why did you call me here in such a hurry? What's the matter? Madame Shui was arranging the performances in the front hall. Suddenly, a waiter told her that Mu Lily was looking for her. She was very anxious. She put off all her work and came here because of the sisterly love between sisters. Seeing Xiao Yushua, Mu Lily acted as if she had seen her savior. She stepped forward and grabbed Xiao Yushua's wrist. Yushua, you must help me this time. What's going on? Madame Shui knew that Mu Lily was a strong-willed person. Although she had panicked a lot in the past, she had never been like this. She seemed to be out of her wits. Madame Shui was also shocked by her change. Yushua, you know that there was a fight outside the gate just now, right? Here's the thing. After Mu Lily told her the details, Xiao Yushua's face changed. She became more nervous and worried. So this time, in order to save you, Yang Si injured the messenger of Walla, which got him into big trouble. Unless Dong Shuai is willing to help, I'm afraid that he is just a servant. He is destined to make sacrifices and even pay a price for this. Mu Lily was so anxious that she burst into tears. Wait, Sister Mu. Don't worry. Let me think about it. Xiao Yuxue had become the top courtesan of 100 Flowers Hall not only because of her sweet voice, but also because of her wisdom. Otherwise, she would have been able to become Dong Shuai's woman, while Madame Xiang had not been able to become Dong Shuai's woman. Xiao Yuxue forced herself to calm down. She thought about the seriousness of the matter first. If Yang Si was just a servant of Dong Shuai, it was indeed troublesome for him to do such a thing. If it were other masters, they would probably push him out and make him a sacrifice in order to calm down the situation. But Dong Shuai was not an ordinary person. He would not treat his servant like this. Xiao Yuxue comforted herself. Mu Lily seemed to be a little impatient. Yuxue, this time, no matter what, you have to help me, begged Dong Shuai. As long as Yang Si is fine, I'm willing to do anything to atone for his crime. Mu Lily's eagerness made Xiao Yuxue feel that something was wrong. After thinking for a while, she widened her eyes and asked, Sister Mu, Yang Si just saved you once. You don't have to be so excited. But why do you seem to be ready to risk everything? Is it because? Yes, I just fell in love with him. The moment he saved me, his smile completely opened my heart. To tell you the truth, I fell in love with him at that time. Mu Lily was really daring. Faced with Madame Shue's test, she admitted it directly. This was a little beyond Xiao Yuxue's expectation. She had thought that Mu Lily just wanted to repay her kindness, but now it seemed that it was not so simple. It was very likely that if something happened to Yang Si, then this elder sister would not live alone. She knew her sister well. She knew that she was capable of doing such a thing. Thinking that Yang Si's life was closely related to Mu Lily's, Xiao Yuxue did not dare to neglect her. Okay, I'll go back to the Yang village and plead with Dong Shuai. Thank you, thank you. Mu Lily's face was full of gratitude. She knew that Madame Shuai was willing to plead with Dong Shuai because of her. This was also why she was willing to confess her feelings for Yang Si without any reservations. Madame Shuai left as soon as she said she would. She got into her carriage and left the immortal abode. About 15 minutes after she left, Tang Tong arrived, accompanied by 50 members of the embroidered uniform guard. Wang Zhen held important shares in the immortal abode, so Tang Tong didn't dare act recklessly. He didn't even put on his flying suit. Instead, he changed into casual clothes and went to find Mu Lily, the head of the immortal abode. Mu Lily was shocked by Tang Tong's sudden arrival. She had a premonition that something was going to happen, but in order to give Madame Shuai enough time to plead, she pretended not to know anything. When she heard that Tang Tong was looking for Yang Si, she put on a serious face and said that she had seen him just now, and that she would send someone to look for him. Tang Tong didn't suspect anything and agreed with a smile. However, they waited for an hour until he was getting impatient. Mu Lily also knew that she couldn't hide it any longer. Only then did she say that Yang Si had most likely returned to the Yang clan manor. Let's go to the Yang clan manor. Tang Tong's face was full of displeasure. They'd been here for too long. Who knew if they'd be able to find Yang Si? He didn't want to cause trouble if he missed his job. Mu Lily's heart clenched as she watched Tang Tong and the others leave. She'd originally wanted to go back and take a look, but she was on duty today. If she left, it would be a dereliction of duty. It would only anger Dong Shuai, and the gains wouldn't make up for the losses. Since she couldn't go back with them, all she could do was pray that nothing happened to Yang Si. Xiao Yuxue's pleas would be effective. The situation in the Yang clan manor was completely different from what Mu Lily had imagined. Yang Qindong had no intention of giving up on Yang Si. His personality didn't allow him to do so. Yang Si had rushed back as soon as he'd finished his preparations. As soon as he entered the manor, he saw Yang Chendong and gave him a detailed account of what had happened. Then, he half knelt on the ground. His actions today were a little rash, but seeing that the embroidered uniform guards were only watching the show without making a move, he could not just stand by and watch Mu Lily be taken away. If that was the case, he was afraid that it would make the young master unhappy. Yang Chendong was writing something in his study. It was a new song and a new book. The area covered by Yang Bao was no longer limited to the capital. He had already reached Tianjinwei, and the next step was to prepare to enter the auxiliary capital, Nanjing. Although this might take some time, the necessary preparations had to be made. As he wrote, he listened to Yang Si's report. From the beginning to the end, there was not the slightest change. Even when he heard that Tuo Gear's arm had been dislocated, he still continued to write with vigor. Qiao Yin, who was grinding ink at the side, trembled. She was clearly afraid when she heard this. "It's fine." Yang Chendong had no choice but to put down his brush. He gently placed his hand on the back of Qiao Yin's hand and gave her a comforting smile. Then, he slowly turned his gaze to Yang Si, who was kneeling on the ground. "You did the right thing. Get up." "Thank you, young master." The words, "did the right thing," made Yang Si feel as if he had been pardoned. He stood up, and Tiger's Mane and Beta Persei, who were standing to the side, hurriedly reached out to help him up. In the past few days, they had gotten along very well, as if they were blood brothers. Of course, they didn't want to see their brother make any mistakes. Chapter 126. When he saw Tiger's Mane and Beta Persei's nervous expressions, Yang Chendong chuckled. "With our current strength, we can still cause trouble, but we shouldn't be afraid of it. If anyone provokes us, when it comes to matters of principle, we absolutely cannot back down. If we can't back down, we'll F*ck them up." The vulgar F*ck them up caused Tiger's Mane and the others to tremble, their eyes shining. This was the temperament and style of a true hero. This matter was originally caused by the Walla emissaries being overbearing. They wanted to see me, but couldn't, so they had no choice but to target the immortal abode. Yang Chendong's mind was very clear, and he quickly thought through the entire situation. Since this matter has come, there's no way to avoid it. If that's the case, then we'll just have to face it as we should. Yang Chendong spoke with a face full of confidence. This confidence came from his large warehouse. With it, he didn't believe that there was anyone in this world who could harm him. If it weren't for the sake of the great Ming's people, and the fact that he didn't want them to experience the flames of war, he would have already used Crimson City as the center and slaughtered his way into the great Ming's interior. If he didn't want the common people to suffer, then he had to play a big game of chess. In the process of laying out his plans, he had to endure patiently. However, enduring patiently didn't mean that he had no principles to back down. For example, Yang Si's actions were within his rights. If he couldn't even protect his people this time, then his titles as young master and Dong Shui would lose all meaning. No matter how many treasures there were in the warehouse, they would only be decorations. Yang Si had to be protected. As for how many troublesome matters would arise in the process, he would just have to deal with them as they came. He had already made up his mind. When he was about to announce it, Madame Snow stumbled into the study. Her face was covered in sweat, and her expression was extremely nervous. When she entered the study and saw that Yang Si was still standing there, she breathed a sigh of relief. "Sister Shui, what happened to you?" Qiao Yin was shocked to see Madame Snow in such a state. She hurriedly took out a fragrant handkerchief and walked over. Yang Chendong's eyes also fell on Madame Snow. There was curiosity and doubt in his eyes. At the same time, there was a faint murderous intent flowing in his eyes. Yang Chendong thought that something big must have happened to make Madame Snow so nervous. Could it be that someone had attacked the immortal abode? Someone was challenging his bottom line, forcing him to erupt with an appropriate amount of strength. I'm fine. Noticing the confusion in their eyes, Madame Shui thought that she might have acted too hastily and caused misunderstandings. She hurriedly explained, I'm here for Yangxi. Young master, can I beg you not to hurt Yangxi? He did it to save Sister Mu. Big Sister Mu said that as long as young master spares Yangxi, she'll do anything you ask of her. She's willing to be a slave for the rest of her life, working for the immortal abode. Wait a moment. Yang Chendong interrupted Madame Snow. Why is Mu Lily so worried about Yangxi? You came here in such a hurry. You must have been entrusted with this by Big Sister Mu, right? His question hit the nail on the head. Madame Snow's face flushed red. She knew that nothing could be hidden from Dong Shui. She nodded and said, yes, Big Sister Mu went to find Madame Snow. She said that Yangxi did everything to save her. She couldn't be ungrateful, so she asked me to intercede on his behalf. I'm afraid that's not all. Yang Chendong chuckled. He'd heard something different in Madame Snow's words. Yangxi was just a servant. In any other noble family, his existence was completely dispensable. Even if he'd made some kind of contribution, he wouldn't have earned such gratitude from his master. But judging from Mu Lily's expression, she was obviously very anxious. Otherwise, Madame Snow wouldn't have come back in such a hurry. There must be something else. Since Yang Chendong had pointed it out, Madame Snow knew that there were some things that she couldn't hide. Otherwise, if Dong Shui found out that she had something on her mind, it would be a big deal. After deciding to say it, she turned her head, looked at Yangxi and said, Elder Sister Mu admires you, you can be considered lucky. What? Yangxi hadn't figured out what had happened. But when Madame Snow suddenly pointed at him, he was immediately stunned. At first, he didn't know what to do. Then, his face turned red. Obviously, he was a little overwhelmed and even a little emotional. Ha ha. Yang Chendong, on the other hand, could not help laughing out loud when he finally heard Mu Lily's attitude from Madame Snow. Good luck. Yangxi, you're in luck. Ha. Young master. Yangxi was very embarrassed by Yang Chendong's laughter. He could only lower his head and express his feelings silently. Well, there's nothing to be embarrassed about. Tell me, do you like Mu Lily? Of course, she's a few years older than you. If you don't like her, it's fine. Just make her give up on this idea. Although Yang Chendong was very happy that these trusted subordinates of his settled down early, he was also relieved. However, he wouldn't force her to do anything. Love required mutual love, and the two of them had to spend their days together. It wasn't something that could be done by force. Well. Yangxi reached out and scratched his head. He was a little embarrassed to face some questions. Don't beat around the bush. The young master asked you. Just tell him the truth. What are you afraid of? Tiger's Mane urged anxiously when he saw Yangxi's ambiguous attitude. His right hand was naturally raised. From the looks of it, if Yangxi couldn't give an answer, this slap would fall at any time. Seeing that everyone was looking at him and waiting for an answer, Yangxi knew that it was not the time to be pretentious. He immediately raised his head and looked at Yang Chendong. He knelt on the ground again. Young master, I also like Steward Mu. If she's willing, please accept her, young master. When Yangxi finally expressed his attitude, Tiger's Mane's big hand finally fell and hit him on the back of the neck. Tiger's Mane then laughed and said, You're the one who dares to admit what you did. Ha. Hearing Tiger's Mane's words, several people in the study laughed. Yang Chendong's face was also filled with joy. Very good. Since both of you have feelings for each other, let's settle this matter first. Once this matter is over, we'll work for them. But before that, Yang Si, you need to hide for a while. Tell everyone that he has returned to his hometown in Jianghu Prefecture. Do you understand? This was Yang Chendong's preparation to protect Yang Si. After hearing this, everyone immediately agreed in unison. At this moment, footsteps came from outside the study. Yang Wu walked into the study and half-knelt. Young master, Jianghu Tang Tong of the embroidered uniform guard is here. He said he has something to ask you. He came so quickly. Yang Chendong's face immediately became serious. Take him to the side hall and wait. Young master, I'll go over now. Yes. Yang Wu answered and left. Yang Chendong looked at Tiger's mane and said, take Yang Si to the backyard and find a place to hide. Tiger's mane, follow young master to the side hall and meet Tang Tong. After saying this, Yang Chendong stood up. Madame Snow looked at him anxiously and seemed to want to say something, but he spoke first. Don't think too much. Yang Si will be fine. Yang Chendong went straight to the side hall. Madame Snow was still a little uneasy. Xiao Yin, who stayed behind, held her hand and comforted her. Sister Snow, don't worry. With young master here, Yang Si will never be handed over. These words weren't words of comfort, but Xiao Yin was well aware of the close relationship between the young master and the retainers. It's just that some things can't be explained to others. You can only rely on yourself to observe and see with your heart to understand a thing or two. Tang Tong had just been led into the side hall by Yang Wu when Yang Chendong and Tiger's mane appeared in the side hall. Seeing Yang Chendong in green, Tang Tong did not dare to be arrogant. She quickly sat up and saluted with her hands folded. Greetings, Yang Chendong. Chili Arch Tang, you're welcome. Yang Chendong pointed to the chair with a smile on his face. Thank you, Yang Chendong. Tang Tong said politely and then sat down again. A maid brought tea and put it in front of Tang Tong and Yang Chendong. Then she left. As a guest, Tang Tong gently picked up the teacup and took a sip. Then she nodded with a look of enjoyment. Dong Shuai's tea is really good. Chili Arch Tang, you're welcome. If you like it, you can take some back when you leave. Yang Chendong still had a smile on his face. He spoke unhurriedly and did not seem to have any intention of asking why Tang Tong was here. In Tang Tong's eyes, Yang Chendong's calmness made him unhappy. He had brought dozens of brocade guards with him. If it were other ministers, they would have panicked and lost their composure. There were usually only two possibilities for Yang Chendong to show such indifference. First, he was pretending to be stupid. Second, he was really stupid. The great Dong Shuai could not have a problem with his brain. Then, it could only be the first answer. It seemed that it would be very difficult to find Yang Si, who had hit people. However, he had to do his job. Even if this trip was annoying, he could only get straight to the point. Yang Chendong, the situation is like this. This chili arch is here for a servant of yours named Yang Si. He injured people outside the Immortal abode earlier. They've already reported it to the authorities and are going to confront him. However, I don't know if it would be convenient for you to hand him over. Tang Tong spoke in a probing tone. If one looked closely, they would even see a trace of a smile on her face. It was as if she wanted to tell Yang Chendong that she was not here for him. She was here because the implications of this matter were too great. Given her position, she had no choice. Chapter 127. Yang Chendong listened attentively, without the slightest hint of annoyance. It was as if he had just learned of this matter. When Tang Tong finished speaking and closed his mouth, he feigned surprise and said, "Something like this actually happened? How audacious." Tang Tong didn't know whether he was referring to Yang Si, who had beaten someone up, or to Tang Gu, who had wanted to commit murder outside the immortal abode. As soon as he said this, Tang Tong's expression became somewhat unsightly. However, what made him even more embarrassed was that Yang Chendong seemed to have only expressed his attitude. After saying this, he didn't say anything else. Unable to bear it any longer, Lord Tang raised his head to look, only to see Yang Chendong leisurely sipping on his tea. This attitude really infuriated Tang Tong quite a bit. "What's this? Your servant was injured by someone else, and as the master, you're just going to let it go with a single comment of audacity?" Tang Tong's expression darkened. "Yang Shima, you see, the matter has already happened. Shouldn't we arrest him?" "Of course. A life for a life, and a debt must be repaid. Although he didn't kill anyone, beating someone up is still wrong. If Lord Tang wants to arrest him, then go ahead. There's no need to give this official face." Seeing that Tang Tong was starting to get impatient, Yang Chendong spoke with a righteous expression. He didn't seem like he was going to show any favoritism. "Good. It's rare for Lord Tang to be so righteous. Since that's the case, can't you hand him over?" Tang Tong knew that what he was doing would make Yang Chendong unhappy. However, he had to do his job, so he had to do it properly. Besides, he was only arresting a servant, not making things difficult for Yang Chendong. There shouldn't be any problems, right? Hand him over? In that instant, it was Yang Chendong's turn to be shocked and confused. Since Yang Si injured someone, Lord Tang should just go ahead and arrest him. Why are you still asking this official for him? It's really puzzling. Yang Chendong shook his head as he spoke. He was just short of saying that Tang Tong's request was too abrupt, too inappropriate, too inappropriate. Upon seeing Yang Chendong's reaction, Tang Tong finally understood what the Dong Shui was thinking. To put it nicely, he was shirking responsibility. To put it bluntly, he was pretending to be stupid and acting shamelessly. If he had already caught Yang Si, why would he need to make this trip to the Yang family manor? Although Yang Chendong had some talent, some ability to make money, and even had a cooperative relationship with his superior, eunuch Wang Zhen, these were not enough for him to greet him over such a small matter. Angry at Yang Chendong's act of pretending to be stupid, Tang Tong's expression became much more severe. "Yang Shima, to tell you the truth, Yang Si escaped and I don't know where he went. This time, I came to the Yang family manor to ask you to hand him over." Seeing that Tang Tong had finally revealed his tale, Yang Chendong chuckled and shook his head as if he had heard a funny joke. "Lord Tang, I said that Yang Si beat someone up. It's right for you to arrest him. There's no need to say anything to this official. As for what you said about asking me to hand him over, it's really inconceivable." "What? Could it be that Yang Shima didn't hide him? I've already asked the soldiers guarding the city. They saw Yang Si coming out of the city gate and heading towards the Yang family manor." Tang Tong laid out the situation she knew on the table, as if she already had something on him. He had no choice but to admit it. What a joke. If that's the case, then Lord Tong is certain that I'm harboring criminals. Very well, then please show me the evidence. If this official is guilty, then I'm willing to accept the punishment. Yang Chendong spread out his hands and frowned as he spoke with great displeasure. "I don't have direct evidence, but this lord is certain that Yang Si must be in the Yang family manor. If you don't hand him over, then forgive this lord for being unreasonable and searching the manor." Tang Tong's eyes widened, and even the veins on his arms bulged to express his dissatisfaction. Tang Tong's threat rang out in the side hall. When Tiger's Mane heard it, his body unconsciously tensed up. He was certain that as long as the young master gave the order, he would immediately take action to subdue Tang Tong. What bullshit lord of the embroidered uniform guard? Perhaps he had some martial arts skills, but he was nothing in the eyes of the #1 person in the Yang family's military. Tang Tong was still staring at Yang Chendong and didn't notice anything wrong with Tiger's Mane. On the other hand, Yang Chendong sensed a slight change and coughed lightly to remind Tiger's mane not to act rashly. Then, he turned to look at Tang Tong and said, "Lord Tang, are you that confident? How can you be so sure that anyone who comes to my Yang village will definitely enter my village? Have you ever thought that if you forcefully searched the manor and couldn't find anyone, this official would report you?" Humph! When he saw that Yang Chendong wanted to threaten him, Tang Tong raised his head and put on an insufferably arrogant and fearless expression. Yang Chendong saw all of this and laughed instead of getting angry. "Oh, right, I forgot that Lord Tang is a member of the embroidered uniform guard. You aren't afraid of being impeached by us officials. However, I don't know if silver is enough. 10,000 taels, 100,000 taels, or even 1,000,000 taels. I believe that as long as this official is able to fork out the silver, there should be many people in the palace who are willing to speak up for this official. When the time comes, one side is a huge sum of money, while the other is a mere lord of the embroidered uniform guard. What do you think those people will choose? Of course, it's hard to say if you are worth that much money. However, this official knows that in order to maintain their dignity, it is worth it to fork out some silver. Not to mention, this official has a lot of silver, so much so that I can't spend it all. I don't think I need anyone to remind me of this, right?" As soon as he finished speaking, Tang Tong's expression changed again. When Tang Tong first heard that he was going to be impeached, he didn't care. After all, he was a member of the embroidered uniform guard and this time, he was in the right. This was also the reason why the embroidered uniform guard and the East faction guards were so arrogant. However, when he continued to listen and heard that Yang Chendong wanted to use silver to pave the way and bribe the people in the palace, it was as if he had hit the weak spot of a snake. Finally, his expression began to change drastically. It wasn't the people in the imperial court, but the people in the palace. This meant that Yang Chendong didn't want to give the silver to the officials, but to the eunuchs in the palace. As a subordinate of the eunuchs, Tang Tong was very clear about the human nature of eunuchs. In the eyes of these people who couldn't be considered complete, loyalty and friendship were all nonsense. Only silver and authority were tangible things that could be seen and touched. The entire embroidered uniform guard only had 14,000 man posts and only 14,000 man officers. Who knew how many people were staring at each of the positions? If he didn't make any mistakes, there would still be people looking for mistakes. If Yang Chendong was really willing to pay a large sum of money, his position as the 1,000-man officer would really be in danger. He even thought that in the face of such a large sum of money, even his immediate superior, eunuch Wang Zhen, might abandon him. In the palace, there was no lack of capable people. Under the influence of what they saw and heard every day, the eunuchs had long gotten used to the internal strife. They had long understood what it meant to cheat each other and what it meant to hit someone when they were down. Once something happened to him, he didn't know how many people would secretly plot against him. Would Yang Chendong be willing to pay a large sum of money? Others didn't know, but the things that this person did couldn't be judged by common sense. Perhaps for the so-called dignity that wasn't worth much, he would really do it. If he was really willing to pay 1,000,000 taels of silver, he dared to guarantee that he would have a good time raiding the village. However, it wouldn't be long before countless reasons would appear to make him a prisoner. After a careful analysis, Tang Tong couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. When he looked at Yang Chendong, although the other party's face had already returned to its previous calm state and looked as harmless as before, for some reason, in his eyes, Yang Chendong seemed to have become as terrifying as a ferocious tiger that could eat people. Noticing that Tang Tong's expression was constantly changing, Yang Chendong didn't say anything else, nor did he have the intention to rush him. He knew that some things needed to be thought through by himself. Of course, if the other party wasn't afraid of his threat, then there was only one last step left, which was to let the tiger's man and the others strike first. Although the consequences of this would be extremely severe, it was still better than raiding the village. After the Yang family manor passed through his hands, there were already too many secrets. Many of the good things stored were also used up and he didn't have time to put them away. This matter also reminded Yang Chendong that in the future, it was better not to put too many things that could not be seen by others in the manor. He had to be vigilant at all times. He did not want to wait until something big happened. If he reacted, then it might be too late. Yang Chendong didn't say anything, but Tang Tong's heart was in turmoil. In the end, his rationality prevailed over his impulse. If he searched the village, regardless of whether he found Yang Si or not, he was afraid that this enmity would be formed. He could foresee that the outcome that awaited him wouldn't be too good. Since that was the case, he might as well do a favor at little cost. Sigh. After a long sigh, Tang Tong was also an expert at acting. He frowned and said as if he had been wronged, Yang Si Ma, of course this Qian who doesn't want to make things difficult for you. However, the order was given by the Imperial Horse Supervisor Eunuch Qian Seng. I'm only following orders. If I can't find him, I really don't know how to explain it. That's simple. Yang Chendong's face was full of confidence. He gave Tang Tong a friendly smile and said, Qian Hu Tang, you can say that Yang Si knew that he had hurt someone and was afraid of being sued, so he has already left the capital. It's very likely that he went to the Yang family manor in Jianghu Prefecture. As long as the checkpoints along the way are strict, it's very likely that he will be intercepted and arrested halfway. Chapter 128. This was the reason Yang Chendong came up with. He didn't say that he couldn't catch Yang Si. This was to give Qian Sengbao hope and allow Tang Tong to report back. As for whether he could catch Yang Si or not, it wouldn't be long before Walla's messenger couldn't even protect himself. When that happened, who would pay attention to Yang Si? Even if someone saw Yang Si, his identity would be changed. He would no longer be a madman but a hero who killed the enemy. Tang Tong was startled when he heard the reason. He then asked suspiciously, did Yang Si really escape? Can we really catch him? Does Yang Xianma know the consequences if we catch him? I know. Don't worry, Lord Tang. By the way, all of you must be tired from the trip. I've already prepared 5,000 taels of silver outside. When Lord Tang leaves, please distribute it to all of you. Since Tang Tong asked such a question, it meant that he agreed with the reason. He was just worried. Since the matter had been settled, Yang Chendong naturally had to show sufficient friendliness. 5,000 taels of silver was just enough to fill a large wooden chest. Using this to settle this matter was worth it no matter how one looked at it. Whether it was at the seaside of Crimson City, Immortal Abode, or sky beyond heaven, Yang Chendong could be described as earning a fortune every day. Since he didn't lack money, any problem that could be solved with silver taels wouldn't be a problem anymore. With a reason to report back and silver taels, Tang Tong's expression instantly turned for the better. He cupped his fists and smiled, Yang Xianma is too courteous. Since Yang Si isn't in the manor and has escaped to Jianghu residence, I will report back now. As for Lord Tang's decision, it will be up to the higher-ups. Hee, of course. Yang Chendong chuckled. He knew that Tang Tong wouldn't make things difficult for him on this matter. After this matter, the friendship between the two deepened. Of course, the smile on Tang Tong's face became even brighter. Reporting. Just as Yang Chendong and Tang Tong were laughing and looking at each other, looking like they were getting along very well, Yang Wu suddenly ran in from outside the door. Because he was running too fast, he almost tripped over the door sill. What's going on? Don't you see that young master is talking with someone? Seeing Yang Wu lose his composure, Tiger's Mane stepped forward and reprimanded him softly. What happened? Yang Chendong noticed Tiger's Mane's loss of composure and was somewhat puzzled. In his impression, these Yang family retainers had long been trained to remain calm even if Mount Tai were to collapse in front of them. He really didn't know what had happened to make them behave like this. Young master, third young master is here. He has already entered the manor. Jianghu didn't have time to explain anything to Tiger's Mane. When he saw Yang Chendong's question, he immediately answered. Third princess? Princess Changde? Why is she here? Yang Chendong was slightly taken aback when he heard this. Princesses, especially after reaching adulthood, weren't allowed to leave the palace as they pleased. Then why did she come to his manor without even greeting him? What was going on? Yang Chendong was flabbergasted. Tang Tong, who had been chatting happily with him, also had a similarly confused look on his face. He also didn't understand why the princess would leave the palace, and why she would come to the Yang manor. While the two of them were puzzled, or rather, unable to react for a moment, the sound of noisy footsteps came from outside the side hall. Then, they heard a eunuch shout in a high-pitched voice, "The princess has arrived." As the voice fell, a group of junior eunuchs entered the hall. Then, under the escort of a dozen palace maids, Princess Changde, dressed in a pink gown, walked in and stood in front of Yang Chendong. Speaking of which, this was the second time the two of them had met. "Greetings, Princess Qiansui." Tang Tong reacted quickly. Once he saw Princess Changde, he knelt on the ground. Yang Chendong, who was at the side, was only slightly taken aback before he had no choice but to kneel on the ground as well. "Rise." Fortunately, before Yang Chendong's knees touched the ground, Princess Changde had already spoken. "Thank you, Qiansui." Yang Chendong knew when to stop, and hurriedly got up. His movements were even faster than Tang Tong's. Fortunately, the princess's attention wasn't on him. Instead, she stared at Tang Tong and said, "I recognize you. You're Tang Tong, right?" Hearing that the princess actually recognized him, Tang Tong's face was naturally filled with joy. Princess has a good memory. This lowly one is Tang Tong, and now, Tang Tong seemed to want to use this opportunity to show off. He had heard that Princess Changde and the emperor were siblings from the same mother, and had a very good relationship. With his status, fawning on the emperor was a little far-fetched, but fawning on the princess was a shortcut. But before he could finish, Princess Changde had already spoken. "Why did you bring so many people to the Yang family manor? Did Yang Jima commit any crime?" This, he didn't. Tang Tong didn't know what the princess meant, but from her tone, he could tell that she was a little angry, so he wanted to explain himself. However, Princess Changde had no intention of listening to his explanation. Instead, she waved her hand impatiently. "Alright, as long as Yang Jima didn't do anything wrong, then don't create such a scene in the future. Don't think that just because royal brother gave you power, you can really do whatever you want. Let me tell you, others might be afraid of you, but this princess isn't. If you anger this princess, we'll see who's the one who loses out in front of royal brother." After Princess Changde's words, Tang Tong felt the world spin. It seemed that the third princess was here to support Yang Chendong. Fortunately, she didn't give the order to search the manor. Otherwise, she really didn't know how to clean up this mess. Others might not be able to comment on the matters of the eunuch group, but as a member of the royal family, Princess Changde could. Not only was she on good terms with the queen of the imperial harem, Empress Qian, she was also the emperor's biological sister. She was greatly appreciated by the emperor. This could be seen from the grand birthday banquet that was held a while ago. Tang Tong broke out in cold sweat, his lips trembling. He knew that if he didn't clarify today's matter, there would be consequences later on. Thus, he didn't care so much and lowered his head. "Long live Princess, this lowly one is here on the orders of Supervisor Qian Sengbao to investigate this matter." "What's there to investigate? Don't think that this princess doesn't know. It's just beating up a Walla envoy, but you didn't investigate clearly who provoked them first before arresting people? Also, the one who beat him up was just an ordinary servant of the Yang family. You even bothered the Eastern commander over such a small matter. If that's the case, then if someone from the embroidered uniform guards made a mistake, shouldn't they also ask the Jianghu directly in charge of you for an explanation? Princess Xianxia's coquettish voice resounded throughout the entire side hall. Her words left Tang Tong speechless. He originally thought that the third princess just happened to be there at the right time. But with these words, who wouldn't understand that she had clearly come prepared? She was even here specifically to solve the problem for Yang Chendong. At this moment, Tang Tong finally understood that with the third princess backing Yang Chendong, he wasn't someone he could mess with in the future. Yes, long live Princess is right. I will go back and report this to Eunuch Qian. Tang Tong nodded his head as he spoke. From the looks of it, he looked exactly like a pug. Tang Tong left, but he didn't forget to take the chest of silver that Yang Chendong had prepared with him. From this point of view, he had accepted the goodwill. He had already promised that if he didn't take the silver this time, it would mean that he would have to draw a line with the Eastern commander in the future. Princess Xianxia came and reprimanded Tang Tong, showing her rude and unreasonable side. As the outside world said, she was incomparably coquettish. However, when everyone in the side hall was reprimanded by her, she indeed looked at Yang Chendong with a smile like a flower. It was as if she was staring at an extremely exquisite ancient artifact. This gaze made 6th young Master Yang feel as if he had become a rare animal in the zoo. It was a very bad feeling. The atmosphere was a little awkward. Yang Chendong was the first to speak, cupping his fists in a grateful manner. Thank you for speaking up for me, Princess. Chendong really has nothing to repay you with. Sigh, how can there be nothing to repay you with? You are so capable, you must have a lot of fun things. Just take out 2 of them and let this princess see them. Princess Xianxia spoke casually, but in Yang Chendong's ears, he was extremely wary. He had never underestimated anyone, even if the girl in front of him was only 14 years old. She had grown up in the imperial family since she was young, so she had matured earlier than others. After getting used to too many dirty things, it was impossible for her to not be mature. Usually, every word of this kind of person had a deep meaning. Everything depended on how the person who heard it interpreted it. If you ignored these words, you might unknowingly suffer a great loss. Not knowing whether this was a test or not, Yang Chendong pondered for a moment before raising his head and saying with a smile, "Princess, you must be joking. Whatever Chendong has, the imperial family has as well. Even the world belongs to the great Ming Dynasty. If there is anything here that Princess likes, you can take it away." Oh? Is that true? Sensing Yang Chendong's cautious and guarded manner, Princess Xianxia smiled. Not to mention, she had inherited the Zhu family's bloodline. Regardless of her temper, she was beautiful and charming. Under this smile, there were many things to admire. Yes. Yang Chendong's gaze tightened. Then, he felt that it wasn't very friendly to look directly at the princess, so he looked away and agreed. Very good. Since that's the case, then this princess won't stand on ceremony. Princess Xianxia giggled. Then, her gaze began to size up the side hall. However, it was only for a moment before it finally landed on Yang Chendong and the jade pendant on his waist. Chapter 129. Yang Chendong was also sizing up Princess Xianxia. When he saw her gaze fall on the jade pendant he carried with him, his heart tightened. This was a waist pendant with the words peace engraved on it. It wasn't very valuable, but it was given to him by his father when he was 1 year old. It had an extraordinary meaning. "Princess, this was given to me by my father." "This, what?" "Dong Shui just said that everything here belongs to the Zhu family and that we can take it as we wish. Are you going back on your words now?" Princess Xianxia said sternly. Her face, which was originally pleasant to look at, changed in an instant, giving people a lot of pressure. This pressure obviously couldn't scare Yang Chendong, but it reminded him of her identity. Indeed, they were all from the Zhu family. None of them were easy to get along with. They changed their faces faster than flipping a book. Not wanting to be a busybody, he immediately took off his waist pendant and handed it over with both hands. Since the princess likes it, you can have it. Ha, that's more like it. As if she really liked this waist pendant, Princess Xianxia stretched out her jade-like hands to receive it. Then, she regained the innocent expression of a girl. Alright, this princess has helped you solve your problem. Asking for a waist pendant from you isn't considered bullying me. Ha ha ha, let's go. Princess Xianxia left just like that, not staying for long. She probably knew that with her current status, staying too long in the Yang family village would easily attract criticism. Although she wasn't afraid of public opinion, it was better to avoid as much trouble as possible. The princess left, leaving Yang Chendong alone in the side hall, deep in thought. The third princess's sudden appearance and quick departure made him a little uncertain. If he had to pinpoint her intentions, it would be that she had only taken a waist pendant. He didn't believe that a spoiled princess would care so much about an ordinary waist pendant. Even when Xiao Yin and Lady Xue appeared in the side hall, hand in hand, Yang Chendong still couldn't figure out what was going on. On the other hand, the two women seemed to be aware of his predicament. Because Xiao Yin had been with Yang Chendong for a long time, she was the most courageous. She bluntly said, "Young master, I'm afraid the princess has fallen for you." What? Hearing this, Yang Chendong was shocked. It wasn't that he hadn't thought about it, but that he didn't think it existed at all. Although information was not so developed at that time, the matter of him falling in love with Hu Yan, the daughter of the Hu clan, would not be a secret in front of the emperor. Since the emperor knew about this matter, it was impossible for him to marry the princess to him. One had to know that according to the customs of that time, when a princess married a man of lower status, her status was even higher than that of a concubine. Not only that, as the emperor's son-in-law, he could only have this one woman in his life. Even the servant girl to warm the bed had to be chosen from the princess's own dowry. At that time, this was a tyrannical treaty for men. However, if one wanted to marry the princess, one had to pay a price in order to obtain benefits. Speaking of which, this was very fair. However, this kind of fairness might be useful for a destitute scholar with no power or influence. But whether it was power or money, what did Yang Chendong lack? How could he possibly marry only the princess and restrict his own freedom? The emperor should be aware of this. In addition, for the sake of Hu Ming and Hu Zhangning, he probably wouldn't have this idea. Thus, he took the initiative to omit it. Now that the two women had mentioned it, he carefully recalled Princess Xianxia's attitude towards him. Only then did he realize. Princess Xianxia's attitude did change a lot, but that was just her nature. The spoiled her would still act coquettishly in front of Zhu Qizhen and ask for benefits. In front of others, she was even more unscrupulous. As for the waist ornament, it was just a token of love. Thinking of this, Yang Chendong's expression changed again and again. He sucked in a breath of cold air and said, "This can't be done. Young master, since this can't be done, we have to think of a way." Xiao Yin and Lady Xue both stepped forward, looking concerned. They couldn't not be concerned. If the young master really married the princess, what would they do? If the princess was unreasonable and didn't allow them to stay in the Yang family, they could only leave. At that time, they wouldn't even have a place to cry. For their own rights, they had to do something. Yes, the young master will think of a way. However, we have to do something right now. Yang Chendong's first thought was to immediately send the betrothal gifts to the Hu family. Then, he prepared to ask for the name. Although this situation was complicated, the process that had to be walked through was not something that could be omitted. But as soon as the thought appeared, Yang Chendong rejected it. Not for any other reason, but because this year was a particularly important year. Before the changes in the Tumu castle happened, he couldn't do anything big. Once he provoked someone and caused unnecessary trouble, it would be bad if it led to changes. Fortunately, Princess Xianxia was still young. Moreover, she was only testing the waters today. Even if she wanted to ask the emperor to grant her marriage, she still needed an opportunity. Now that he was resting at home in the name of being sick, it probably wasn't the best time to grant her marriage. Of course, the reason why Yang Chendong was so confident about this was because of Wang Zhen. He and Wang Zhen were in a cooperative relationship. They had agreed to pay him a large sum of money next year. Before the money was in his hands, he definitely didn't want to become the emperor's son-in-law and establish a connection with the imperial family. If Zhu Qizhen had such a thought, Wang Zhen would do everything possible to stop him. This was equivalent to buying time and opportunities for himself. As for after the big event, no matter what the situation was, at least Yang Chendong wouldn't be as passive as he was now. When the time came, he could find an opportunity to act first and report later. At that time, even if the emperor knew, he couldn't let Princess Xianxia marry a married man and share a man with others. With a plan in mind, Yang Chendong regained his confidence. Okay, you don't need to tidy up here. Call Tiger's mane in. I have something to ask him. Seeing that Yang Chendong seemed to be thinking about something, Xiao Yin and Lady Shui looked at each other and left. They knew that all their hopes could only be placed on the young master. They also believed that the young master would be able to solve the problem. This came from a kind of trust. At the same time, it also showed that women in ancient times were not independent. Tang Tong went back and brought back the news that Yang Si was likely to escape to Jianghu Prefecture. She also brought back Princess Xianxia's attitude. Seeing that Tang Tong came back empty-handed, Qian Sengbao's face was cold and he was even prepared to hold her accountable. But when he heard that even Princess Xianxia came out and said those words, he knew that it was unwise to make an issue out of Yang Chendong being beaten up by Yang Si. Since there were no benefits, he didn't want to be involved in it. He immediately arranged for a little eunuch to pass a message to the magazine king, saying that the criminal was on the run and was being arrested. He then threw the matter aside. The magazine king was originally angry because of the incident with the guard captain, Tuj. When the eunuch passed the message, he was even angrier. But soon his attention was diverted. It was not for any other reason, but because the Walla spy in the capital of the Great Ming Dynasty had contacted the buyer who could buy high-yield potatoes. Compared to a guard captain being beaten up, high-yield potatoes were more important to the fate of the Walla. The magazine king put all his attention on the potato matter and even arranged for his most trusted subordinate, Tuj, to handle this matter. In his words, if this matter was done well, it would be a great merit. When the time came, he would also have a merit in front of his brother, Yes Hen. At that time, whether he would be promoted or rewarded, it wouldn't be a problem. Now that there was something to do, Tuj temporarily put aside the grudges in his hands. He brought 4 skilled subordinates and a spy to guide the group of 6 to meet with the potato seller and make a deal. Perhaps in order to gain the trust of the seller first provided 2 full bags of potato seeds. When these things were sent to the relay station, the magazine king personally checked them. After confirming that there were no mistakes, the meeting was arranged. The seller seemed to be a very careful person. He arranged for the meeting to be in a small courtyard in a remote alley. Because of the location, very few people from the warden's office paid attention to this place. On the surface, there seemed to be no problem with the safety. However, this was still a transaction in the capital of the Great Ming Dynasty. If something went wrong and the Ming Dynasty took notice of their plot, it would be a big problem. Tuogu was in favor of trading in such a remote location. But for safety, he still made 2 preparations. First, he didn't have much money on him. This way, even if the other party wanted to do something, without enough benefits, they wouldn't easily make a move. Second, he assigned his 4 subordinates to the surroundings of the alley. If there was any trouble, the 4 of them would be able to call out to each other from a distance. He didn't believe that there was someone who could silently deal with his 4 subordinates. As long as one of them noticed that something was wrong, they could shout and attract the attention of others. After arranging everything, Tuj brought the spy to the small alley. After observing for a while and confirming that there weren't any accidents, they entered the empty courtyard. Tuj was confident that he had arranged everything perfectly. However, he didn't know that there was something called a sniper rifle. He also didn't know that this thing could be installed with a silencer that he had never heard of before. This silencer could guarantee that it could take a person's life from 1,000 meters away as easily as taking something out of a pocket. Just as Tuo Gu was about to enter the small courtyard, Dao Xiao and the other 10 members of the second guard squad had already arrived. They were carefully inspecting the guns and equipment. You're tuning in to the UnparalleledSwordWill YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.